It's Friday, January 24th, 2025. Everybody, let me start off as I typically try to remember to do by saying that you can support our show by going over to supportourshow.com and using one of the array of links there. I wanted to do a quick programming note. Did I talk about this in the last show, the thing about Patreon and video? Did I talk about that?
Yes.
Do you remember we talking about?
How,
okay.
And the whole length of the video is there without the edits.
Yeah, okay, okay. I couldn't remember because I know I talked about it on the actual episode, and I'm putting a little thing at the beginning, a graphic that says, you can go see it there, but I couldn't remember. Okay, so I did that. So the only other
Honestly,
thing is...
wait, did you say you can go see it there for free, or did you say you just go to Patreon? Because when people see that, the full thing is on Patreon, they immediately think, well, I have to pay for it then.
No, I put any tier including free, I think was the verbiage I used.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I put it there because you're right. I said this. I didn't know for a long time that Patreon even had a free tier.
Because it's new. I've only seen it recently pop up with a lot of artists.
No, I was told it's not new, but they didn't make it obvious. I think, and I sort of get this because they didn't want people to just associate it with you. You shouldn't be supporting. I think there was a reasoning behind it, and then at some point they decided, no, there is a community you can build even if it's a free one. So I think there was a philosophy thing involved there where.
And honestly, you know what? I like the free option because it lets me keep an eye on what someone's doing. Yeah. And if I feel like they're doing enough that I actually want to opt in, then I opt in. As opposed to some people are like, I have no free option. You can't even see what I'm up to. Because I get updates that don't let me see what it is, but they still let me know if the artist is doing stuff.
No, I like the fact that there's a free tier. I don't think you should. I mean, we always had the free version of this show, but I do like, because not everybody uses like a paid platform like this. So I do think it's a good idea because people, there's a couple people that I follow in there, and their social platform is Patreon and nothing else. They've given up on the rest because they think Patreon has the best architecture to have free and paying people in the same place, talk to them at once. Makes sense. Yeah, sure. Because there is a community platform that's newish. That was not always there. That was added, I want to say, a year or two ago, where you can now have these community posts that everybody could see. They always had direct messaging, but not that.
You got artists who basically say, hey, what do you think I should draw? And they can put out quizzes questionnaires to see what people is interested in and things like that. It's neat.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't pay to, I don't support an artist unless I see stuff that I actually want to support. You know what I mean?
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I don't just support everybody.
No, I there's a couple of ones I follow for free. Most I pay something for, but there are some that have, frankly, to me, a pretty high minimum, and I'm just sorry. There's a few people where it's like it's $20 or it's nothing, and I'm like, well, then I'll see you later. I'm good. Yeah. I honestly,
you know what? What I was sad about is that Coop doesn't post all his photography in his Patreon, does he?
No, I think Coop is, because he's a little older than us, and I think he's like me, where he's sort of. It's not that it's hard to post on Patreon.
Yeah.
But it's not as easy as it is on other things, like on.
Because Because
Blue Sky, Twitter. It's like a one click and you're done.
I
so
would totally follow a photography Patreon of Coop. I realized after he stopped posting all his crazy shit on Flickr that was like one of the main reasons I went to Flickr anymore was to see his photography.
Yeah.
And then
it's all on Blue Sky now.
Yeah, sorry. I don't need another social media platform.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I'm barely involved with the ones I'm on. You know, it's really funny. I finally jumped on some of this shit as it all fell apart. And I'm kind of standing there now looking at it going, fuck this ship. I got on the Titanic right as it was about to hit the iceberg. So, so I apologize because I haven't gotten a chance to record the next section of my audiobook project. I'm still working on it. But my voice was all zany for a while, and then I've just been so fucking busy that like I gotta find quiet time because that mic picks up everything. I gotta find quiet time in my house when I can record it, and when I am actually feel like I can embody it, because there's almost like I've realized what really annoys me about it is there's almost an acting component to it, because you can't just read it. You can't just be like, and then blah 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 blah. It's like you actually have to like feel it, you know. You have to like actually, and that makes it kind of it's more of a draw, you know. It's I almost said drag, but it's not something that. It's just it exerts more energy, you know. So yeah, but yeah, the Twitter. I mean, Twitter is a fucking shit show at this point, and my wife was like, why are you even on it anymore? She's like, fuck Twitter and fuck Musk. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I kind of feel like that. And I was like, and the thing is, like, I don't really have any followers. So I was like, fuck it. You know what? I'm going to follow. I talked to you about it, and you were like, well, I just use it to post stuff that I've done things for the show or something like that. And you're like, you know what? I'll just do that. I'll stop trying to create any kind of vibe because obviously I don't have one. And I'll just post when I put new parts up. And otherwise, I can fucking ignore it. But that kind of puts me right back where I started, which is not giving a shit. Which, honestly, maybe that's where I belong. I don't know. Yeah. But yes, the audio project is still coming out. It's just I've hit a bit of a lull. I got to get back into the vibe of it. And it's weird though to embody older work. This is a strange thing that I don't think I think only musicians probably get this. Because, like, you know, with a painter, it's like you create a work of art and then there it is, right? And the only reason you would try to recreate that is if the original was destroyed. But in this digital age, you have a copy always. But just like, there's no reason why you would have to go back and relive the painting because you already created it. Whereas with a musician, you can replay the same song over and over again, which is essentially what they have to do, which is quite hard, I think, because you wrote that song at some point. I mean, theoretically, you wrote that song with some emotional intent at some point. And I do wonder if at the 300,000th time you play that song, it hasn't just become an arbitrary idea at that point. You know what I mean? It's like if you say the word banana enough times, it ceases to have a meaning. But with writing, it's like, and this, we're going to talk about Neil Gaiman in a second.
Oh, good.
because it ties into this. We're not going to get too heavily into all the other shit, but it gets into this idea of, so my wife recently said to me that she had been curious about Good Omens, but after all the weird shit going on with Neil Gaiman, she doesn't really want to occupy that headspace. And I said, I don't really have that problem with Good Omens because I know that having read a lot of Pratchett, when I read Good Omens, all I hear is Pratchett. Right?
Sure.
Also, when I read, but she was like, writing is so intimate because when you read somebody's writing, you're in their thought stream. And she said, I have this weird feeling about being in Neil Gaiman's thought stream. And I said, well, the way I deal with this is that I like to think that when I read certain pieces of work were created by a psychology that no longer exists, which is the idea that Neil Gaiman, when he was in his 20s or when he was whatever, he was creating this art and he wasn't what he was now. It's a different creature. And I like to think that the psychology of the being that the Gaimon that wrote the work then versus the Gaimon now, it's a different creature altogether because your brain changes so much across time, right? And that is how I can still read Sandman, because it's not Gaimon present, it's Gaimon, 90s, late 80s, can't remember when it was published. But it's weird for me to go back and embody my old work, because as I'm reading it and trying to kind of add emotion to it, I'm remembering all the shit that triggered certain scenes in my book and like periods of my life that I was in, and like, there's people's reactions in that book, and there's people in that book who represent people that are like no longer in my life, people that have moved, that are just kind of out of it, and it's just such a strange experience to then not only wander through it, but wander through it in a very sort of public way, where like I'm reading it out loud and I'm kind of feeling it and thinking about it. It's very strange. And I really, oddly, it has me sort of not looking forward to reading the next book, because the next book is almost more raw than the first one. I think I get far more heavily into the psychology. I think with every book I write, I get further into like the kind of mad headspace of my universe. But that said, I read the Vulture article about Neil Gaiman. This wasn't even something I wanted to talk about, but I do want to mention it. And you had read it, right?
Yes.
And I just have to say, I'm really horrified, because it always Joe pointed this out to me, that I have a really hard time understanding people who get off on a power struggle. Right? Because my whole thing is, and this is always, and you, Jonas, know me for...
I should say, no, it'd be more accurate to say, I don't think it's that you don't understand it. I think that
I can't empathize with it.
Yeah, well, you take longer to accept it as,
what I
this
said,
happens a lot.
Yeah, because what I said to Joe is, I don't understand why you would mistreat women. Because the thing is, like, growing up, I had a lot of relationships that were fucked up, right? But my whole modus operandi with so we'll call it a sexual partner, because I didn't date everyone I was sleeping with. My whole modus operandi was always this idea of, we should be getting off, right? And I was very concerned with the fact that everyone involved should be getting off some way, some form, right? I was joking around with my wife the other day. I said, hey man, if tomorrow you told me that you want me to dress up like Pluto and march around the room singing Yankee Doodle Dandy, and that would get you off, I was like, then that's what I'd do. I was like, I mean, they would be weird to be in your 40s and suddenly discover you're a furry. But I mean, weirder shit has happened. But it's the whole everyone, and as long as I don't have a traumatic memory of Pluto that hurts me, so I'm crying inside of my Pluto suit, it's fine. Everybody should be content and involved. And that's the way my brain works, right? So like, my big issue growing up was the fact that when I had sexual partners, I was always very interested in what they wanted. And I always kind of ran into this weird situation where there were people I was with that were always like, well, no one's ever asked. And I was like, well, why? Why wouldn't you ask? Why wouldn't you want to know? Everyone's so specific. And some people are almost afraid to say what they like. Because, I mean, some people are afraid they'll be judged or any number of things. So, but that's where my headspace is. So when I read this article, now, I understand that there's still always the possibility that maybe it's made up, but I don't believe that necessarily, because you have so many stories told at different times that have the same ring of similarity, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and the denial. I don't know if
the NDAs don't help either.
Well, the NDAs do not help, but also the denial of nobody ever did anything against their will. That's the denial. It was all. And the thing is, but when you read the story, you kind of look at it and you go, yeah, but it was a power struggle. It's this idea that you had people who were they were either in some sort of financial situation, or you had some kind of star power over them, and you just had it was grossly imbalanced, the power struggle, and then you mistreated them, and that just disgusted me. That idea, and it has made it so that
Though I will try to hold on to Gaimon work from my youth because I like to think that it wasn't that Gaimon, right? It's hard because present day Gaimon is hard. And the argument you have to make is, and this is philosophical, was he always that way or did he become that way?
Well, I actually meant to send this to you and I forgot, so it's funny you bring this up. Well, not funny, but the timing is good. There was an article over on NPR about exactly what you're talking about that basically says, I'll just read, because this is what you're saying, and I think this is the interesting bit. I won't read the whole thing. I'll let people read the whole thing. But the opening says, 2 things can be true at once. A, the allegations of sexual and emotional abuse against author Neil Gaiman, along with claims about a relationship with his son's nanny, are viscerally repellent. They were published in an ably well-reported article in the New York Magazine and its website Vulture this week, and Gaiman denies most of them. B, Gaiman's body of work, which includes the comic series The Sandman, the novels American Gods, and The Ocean at the End of the Lane, is compelling, insightful, and inspirational to a great many people, including me. A does not make the essential abiding truth of B go away. Neither does B do anything to ameliorate the horror of A.
Well, the thing is, I won't support him. I won't support him anymore.
Well, yeah, but that's... Yeah. But like you said,
I already own these books, but I will not...
Yeah.
Like, if my Sandman collection was destroyed, I'd have a really hard time replacing it. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think this is, you're not wrong in that I don't know what the timeline of these events is. I don't remember if they were really specific in that article. I don't remember anything specifically saying years and that type of thing.
So, the funny thing is the way they describe him, that like in the 90s and like he was like a rock star of the writing world, which is so funny because I never think of him that way.
Oh no, I've known his name longer than I knew what he looked like or who he was. I knew his name.
Oh yeah, but the thing is, and maybe this is because I don't suffer from I don't get starstruck at all. I always look at people and I'm like,
well, it's not starstruck, but if you know a person's name, they obviously have a public.
But there are people who get starstruck. I know many people who get celebrity starstruck,
and that's
where they're like,
I'm sure
well, celebrities are just better than us, Yeah.
Many of the people accusing him of things were clearly that. I mean, we just talked about Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I think before we started recording, the idea that those are the people who are.
And I'll tell you. I'll tell you what has really gotten just fucked up for me is that Amanda Palmer, whose music I really liked when she was in the Dresden Dolls, she comes off not great for completely different reasons. And I find myself being unable to listen to her music. And I think it's because it's a sort of different venue. I hear her and then I think of like sort of her presence and all this, and I'm kind of like, oh god, like it's the whole, there's a thing in that article about how Palmer knew that the nanny that she had hired was like, this girl was she was cut off from her parents, she was she was an at-risk individual, she was emotionally insecure. Palmer knew that that it was a danger for her to be around Gaiman. She even told Gaiman, don't stay away from this girl. You might really fuck her up. Right? And the fact that she then sent this girl to babysit their child at Gaiman's, right? Because the two of them both have busy lives, so they're back and forth. It's one of those, okay, you knew that it was a danger and you sent her in anyway. And it's like, well, I think there was a counselor in there that said to Palmer, well, you're just as culpable because you knew that this was a danger and yet you sent her into that situation anyway. And it's like, oh God, it's like, it's just, it all comes off so badly. And I mean, nobody wants their dirty laundry aired. I get that. But it's, it really disgusted me, the situation. And I didn't know anything about the Scientology stuff. Man, I didn't know. I was floored by that. It's one of those weird things you find out and you're like, holy shit, I never knew that. That his father was basically one of like the head Scientology people in the UK, and then and he was abusive and he was not a great person, and like I feel bad. But this goes back to the whole understanding why somebody's fucked up does not then excuse them for doing fucked up things. And I stand by this, right? This whole idea that, I can understand that you're disturbed. I can understand that something was done to you that broke you, but you then do not get a pass for then going on and breaking others. It's like you don't get off scot-free from that. I don't care what happened to you, because there's plenty of other people who had fucked up childhoods that don't then visit it on others. And I just had another weird thing that happened the other day. Yeah, I mean, did you tell me if you knew this? I feel like such an idiot. I didn't know that Joy Division and New Order were basically the same band.
No, one is the remainder of the other.
Yeah. So when the lead singer of Joy Division killed himself, the remaining of the band essentially went on to be New Order. I didn't know that. And now I feel like such an idiot because I saw a recording they did of Love Will Tear Us Apart. New Order did very recently in the last couple of years, and they said, after we became New Order, we had this agreement that we wouldn't play any of the Joy Division stuff because we wanted to create a strong just separation, and that we haven't really played this song as much. And then they did a version of Love Will Tear Us Apart, and when I heard it, I was like, oh my god, it makes so much sense. I was like, that's why I like New Order so much. It's like, because I love Joy Division. I was like, oh, it's fucking weird. The shit that you miss it, and yet the second you hear that little bit of information, you're like, that makes total sense. I don't know how I missed that. I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So I really had a hard time with that whole thing with the Gaimon and the idea. But my wife and I got into this big conversation about headspace, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't think. Oh man, it wasn't long ago that I think on the show I was talking about something I had read where they were talking about how when you read literature, you are essentially reading the psychological narrative stream of an individual. It's very intimate. You're getting into the way their thought process works, right? And so, yeah, it gets to this idea that, the work he has written most recently to this event gives you a view into the psychology where something like this lurks. So it is kind of scary in that respect, It's the same way that like Stephen King. My mother always complains that modern Stephen King, she's like, she thinks it's like toothless. She's like, it's just not as good as the old shit. And I'm like, yeah, because he's an older, stable individual who's like, from the sounds of it, happily married. Whereas when he wrote the early work, he was an alcoholic cokehead who doesn't remember writing some of the books he wrote because he was in such a dark place that nearly destroyed his marriage. Yeah, and it's like, of course it's different. I was like, it makes sense now because when you read old King, I mean, there's such a dread in those books, right? Like from the get-go, there's such a dread. And it's like, well, the dread is the author. The dread is in the author himself. So, yes, being in people's brains, it's fascinating. And writing can get you there. So can music. The same thing. I mean, there are songs you listen to that very much give you the headspace of the songwriter, right? And that's why it's so funny when you have like a pop star who doesn't write their own music. And you're kind of like, oh, you have all this music, but none of it's really you. Like,
yeah, it is interesting when you find out that so many of these big names wrote next to none of their actual big material.
One of my favorite Madonna songs is Bedtime Story, right? And for the longest time, I was like, yeah, I really like that song. And I was always like, it's very unlike her other stuff, but I really like this song. It's written by fucking Bjork. That's why.
And now you know why.
And now I know why I love it so much, because I love Bjork. Yeah. So it's the Gaimon thing is fucked up.
Well, I've talked about this before. The way I look at this stuff is the way I look at everything, which is there is material that people do, and if I feel like that material is tinged with the things that are repugnant, then I stay away from it. Yeah. It's one of the reasons that with I've cited the Kevin Spacey thing. The thing that bothers me in LA Confidential with him is the whole thing with the gay guy who gets murdered, because when you know what he was doing.
Yes, it's too close.
That is, but the movie is so little about that. If he was the main character, which he's not, he's one of many main characters.
No, and he does get killed.
And he gets, I was going to say, he gets killed. And so, in a way, it all works out. But that's the thing is, if Sandman was filled with stuff that seemed directly related to these allegations in a way that
Yeah.
was somehow glamorized, I don't think I could reread it. You know, if the hero was psychosexually manipulating fans, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then that would be tough to put those two things together. Now, some people say that, you know, you only look at the new stuff and you say, I won't support it going forward. And that's a fine, you know, that's a position too.
Well, the thing with Sandman is that how much of Sandman have you reread? And not Mystery Theater, the actual like main Sandman books.
I reread right before the show came out.
Yeah.
I reread the first, well, at the time, the first deluxe edition that existed at the time the show came out. I think there's been another new.
But essentially, preludes and nocturnes, right?
Yeah, because that's what we determined that the show was covering part of. You know what I mean?
So
I wanted to kind of be caught up.
For me, I like most of the what do they call it, Sandman run, right? But for me, oddly, my favorite part of it is the Sam Keith run, because Sam Keith added something to that storytelling that I don't feel like they ever reattained as it went on. I think that his style of art, and maybe it's because, like, you know, I love the Max. I feel like Sam Keith added something to Sandman that I lost, because I remember I love that his stuff just like kind of drips with nuttery, and like I love the way he made these demons and this world look. So this is the whole thing
it's a more, when you have Dave McKean doing the covers and Sam
I love his covers too.
There is nothing else like it at the time. It is so singular. I like stuff beyond that, but you are correct that is
I enjoyed
the essence
all of it. But Preludes and Nocturnes, the Sam Keith doing the art is amazing.
It is, yeah.
You know, and plus recently I was telling Joe, I think they just reissued the Batman Max crossover.
They did, yeah.
So if you could pick that up, that is a weird fucking book.
Anything Sam Keith is involved in is a weird fucking book.
I know, and the thing is, and he didn't do more. Like, I don't know what the hell he's doing with himself. I really wish he did more, because I love his work. And I'm stuck I
think he works slowly. I think he's kind of like Art Adams, where he doesn't do a lot because it takes him a while. I think it's that. Well, he has a website. I know that.
There's one volume of the Maximized, the edition that I haven't been able to get my hands on, and that was like the last bit of Sam Keith I needed to read. But like I love Sam Keith. I love when he was still kind of rising through the ranks of artists. I love the where he would pop up in places, and you'd be like, oh, like he did a stupid comic book where it was like Wolverine versus Cyber. Remember Cyber? We've talked about this before. The most fucking ass villain,
yes,
right?
Boy, do
but
I
the way
Cyber.
he
only
drew
because
them,
of Sam Keith is
yeah,
I remember Cyber.
It was amazing. It is so memorable. Like the it was just psychotic. And the thing is, like, I think sometimes Sam Keith was almost like a God. He's almost he pulls on Bisley, but there's something else there pulling.
And that I was going to say, Simon Bisley is another one where I don't really care what he's doing. I'm going to look at it because
but
it's going to be off the path somehow.
Yeah, Lobo is not a complicated character, but when Lobo gets drawn by Bisley, that shit's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
So, but yes. So for me, I think that's the other thing, is a comic book is also not one person's creation. There's more than just the writing. There's also the art, and the art goes a long way for changing the way the story is told.
Sure.
And the same with the Good Omens. Like, Good Omens is not just Neil Gaiman, not at all. And the thing is, if you've read enough Pratchett, you kind of start to know Pratchett's voice, and Pratchett's voice is very strong in Good Omens. I mean, if that book, and the funny part of it is, like, when I've tried to read Gaiman books on like not his graphic novels, but like his straight fiction, I've never enjoyed it. I've picked up and put his books down so many times. Like, people go on about not New Gods, what's it called?
American Gods.
American Gods. I just couldn't get. I've read the first chapter and then I just didn't buy it. I was like, eh.
No, I was the same way. I read it. I thought it was fine, and that was it.
I mean, I think the problem is the first Gaiman book I read, the first literary book, was with Pratchett, and Pratchett added so much more, and I was perfectly happy to read Pratchett without Gaiman. but I couldn't read Gaimon without Pratchett. So it's a funny old thing. So yeah, I feel bad about it all. I'm horrified about it all. I don't know what kind of justice is going to happen, because I'm sure there's enough people out there that are like, I don't care, I love Gaimon, fuck all, that, you know, he'll be fine. And so will Palmer, for that matter. But Palmer, you know what? There's a funny thing in there. So Palmer wrote this book that was like, it's not as, how was it? The Asking Culture or something like that. You know, where it's like she's her whole mindset was that there's nothing wrong with asking. You know, so like, you know, she was one of the first people who made like a ridiculous money on Bandcamp to fund her album and like all this stuff. And like, I get that. It's like, you know, she has kind of a cult following, and people really like her, and she knows how to kind of, you know, mix it up with them, and she asks people, and people want to be around her. But it's weird because when you read about it, it almost feels, if Amanda Palmer was a man, we would all be weirded out by it. I know that sounds weird and sexist, but it's like the whole, she meets this girl, she hangs out with her, she's like, hey, do you want to be my nanny? Right?
No, it's, you know why? It's not, I understand why. It's not really that it's not that there's something weird about it. It's that traditionally there has been a massive power imbalance when it comes to men versus women versus women versus women and women versus men.
And it feels like a massive power imbalance.
It is. Still. And it is, but we're so used to that imbalance being to the detriment of women.
Yeah.
That you don't, that what you're struggling with is there's a part of you that's like, well, yeah, but you should let it go because this is a woman.
Yeah.
And it's just an automatic kind of defense mechanism. But you're right. It isn't. It isn't different. It is the same thing. It is still somebody taking advantage of somebody else's starstruckness.
And people are starstruck with her, and they, you know, and it's like, okay, well, yeah. I mean, you and the argument I make in my own head when I'm kind of like contemplating these things is the whole, do you as an individual realize that there's a power imbalance? Because I've been in situations before where I didn't realize that there was a power structure, and that I was at the more controlling end of it. I didn't realize, and then, you know, after the fact, I look back and I was like, wow. I was like, why was I in that position? Have you ever had that where you look back and you're like, I don't know why why did I have the upper hand in this, right?
Oh yeah.
My hope is that Palmer doesn't see it, that it's a naivete, but considering that she wrote a whole book about asking for things, that she wrote with Gaimon, I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, and honestly,
I just came up with a word for it because I thought, well, this is sort of, I was trying to combine ensorcelled and embezzlement. Ensorcellement.
Well, and the thing is, like, I love the Dresden Dolls. I love their music. It's fantastic. But I remember I had a friend who was a friend of ours worked with them. Let's keep it vague. I have a friend that worked with them, and I remember thinking, I said to him, like, is she like one of those art school girls that used to annoy the shit out of us? And he was like, that's exactly what she's like. And I was like, okay, I'm good. Because I mean, like, in art school, there was always that girl who needed to be like the center of attention, and she needed everyone to pay attention, and she made a big scene, and she needed to be like, you know, the most important person in the room, and was always and was almost putting on a show, and it was, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, fortunately, I never fell for any of them.
And the thing is, they're cute and they can be fun, but you get exhausted with it very quickly.
Yeah.
And apparently that's exactly what she was like, and I was like, oh, you know what? And I was like, good. I was like, that's fine. I was like, I'm happy with Dresden Dolls. I'm happy with the music, and that's as far as, like, I don't need to give it any more thought. I was like, we're cool, you know. Because my wife was like, were you jealous that your friend got to meet them? And I was like, you know what? No, because I got all the information I needed. I was like, I'm good. You know, they say don't meet your heroes. Don't meet the artists that you like, because the chances of being let down by them are so high. I love Ender's Game. It is such a great book. Meeting Orson Scott Card nearly destroyed that for me because he was such a dick.
Yeah.
Ah, man. Yeah. Like he wasn't, there was just something so dickish about him. And it's like, yeah. So I tend to avoid meeting artists or musicians or any of the people that I like their material quite a bit, because I just don't want it to get ruined. And I love it when I hear nice things. You know, I mean, I like that period. I like it when I hear nice things about anybody. I mean, you can tell me there could be some actor who's a movie I've never watched. You could be like, oh, he's a fantastic person. He gives money to the poor and he does all these great things. I'm like, that's great. That's the way the world should be. People should be nice. But yeah, don't meet your heroes because they'll always let you down. And I think it's because because they're human, and humans have flaws, and humans have bad days, and if you meet, you know what? For all I know, I met Orson Scott Card on his worst day, and he was just like, fuck everybody. And we were like, okay, Orson Scott Card's a dick. And then you find out the rest of the time he's like a fucking angel. You know what I mean? I leave that avenue open.
Sure.
But yeah, it's weird. Except, you know what? Hey, man, that friend who worked with Amanda Palmer, he met his fucking musical heroes, and he loved them. He said they were fantastic. So
well,
I was like,
it's not
guy.
Always. There are.
No, it's not always,
but
the chances are, yeah. So
it
anyway, I actually have stuff to talk about today.
I've met. See, I think for me, I've met the lower tier heroes of mine, and they've always been good.
Oh, you know what? You love Coop, and I loved Coop, and I have always overjoyed to hear that Coop is a very nice person online.
Oh, but to me, that's what I mean. Coop is not a top tier celebrity, and that's good. I think that once you get to that level, that's when you start getting inflated.
I guess that's the thing.
That's what I'm saying though. That's the difference. Is when you're talking about like Amanda Palmer and Neil Gaiman, these people are like they're on TV, they're doing interviews, they're at that level.
Whereas Coop is like a cultural icon to me.
Yes.
I think that man's a legend.
Right. Yeah.
And to know that he's not a dick is fantastic.
Yeah, people like that I've met have always been good. But that's because I really have the only person who is at the level of somebody that I would expect disappointment at that I ever met was for 2 seconds. I met Mads Mikkelsen because I have a man crush on him, and that was it. Right?
And he could tell, right? He looked at you,
and he probably looked at me and went, "Oh God," and went, "All right," So, and that was fine. We didn't have a deep conversation, so I didn't get disappointed. That's fine. If Mila ever did a photo thing, I would probably get one with her, and she'd look at me and know exactly what I was in 2 seconds. But again,
you know what? No. You know what? I'm going to make an argument for this. I don't think you know fully what you are with Mila, and I don't think she'd be able to know what you are either. Because you know how people have like the Madonna whore complex?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she is all of that for you. I think
sure.
And I think that's the thing. I think most people have like a horny thing for Mila, whereas like I think that you have like a total revelry. So no, I don't think she'd be able to I don't think she'd be able to pin it right away. That would take some time.
Yeah, but I think she would understand that maybe this isn't the person.
But yes, that you did
talk
worship
to
of
because
the
I would just
altar
kind
of
of
Mila.
stare at her for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you know what? And I have been told by people who have met her that she is absolutely stunning in person.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. Was it?
I have never seen a bad photo of her. Even the
that same friend of ours met Famke Jensen, who played Jean Grey.
Yes, I remember hearing. Yep.
And he said that she was absolutely stunning in person.
I do remember that, and I have no trouble believing that either.
Anyway, before we get off on this kind of weird male tangent,
and I'll say this: it's because there are certain people who you can tell when they're getting older had work done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's terrible.
And the ones who don't tend to hold up better in general.
Or unless they have the genetic lottery where they just look good.
But usually, I think those people probably know they do because they have parents that probably held up very well. You know what I mean? It's usually.
I watched something recently with Jodie Foster was never like some sort of like. She was never a model in my mind, but I think that Jodie Foster has aged incredibly well. And when I look at her.
Very well.
I see Jodie Foster. Like, it's not like I look at her like, oh, she's an old troll compared to what she used to be.
There's just a few lines added, but other than that.
So, and she's been around, she's been acting since she was a kid. But she said recently that, she doesn't believe in getting work done because it feels weird. And,
I'm sure.
And the thing is, like, yeah, it's funny because everybody who does get like some kind of work done, it's so obvious.
It usually
right?
is, unless it's very minor stuff.
And then as they get older, you're like, oh god, like Demi Moore. Yeah. Demi Moore does not look like what Demi Moore used to look like, and that's not just aging. She has done some shit.
Yeah. You
know?
Denise Richards. There's certain individuals that
Meg Ryan. Have you seen Meg Ryan recently?
Yes, and I'm sorry to say it.
Right, Meg Ryan. Who's the one who's what's her name?
Well,
She's doing
listen, this makes sense because your skin sags and ages and shows its age.
And Hollywood hates aging of any kind.
Well, that's a secondary problem, which is causing that as well. Because there are people who get things done because they themselves internally want to do it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's generally not what it is in Hollywood. It's generally an industry that's saying you better stay looking 25.
Well, for the longest
time,
they
said
possible. You turn 40 as a woman, and they'd be like,
that's
get
the
out of
substance
here.
right there.
You're
right
a grandma now. You get to play grandma roles.
Or nothing. Really, it was nothing.
Oh, you know what? Listen, just to cross over, go all the way. Pornography.
Yeah.
If you're in your 40s and you're in pornography, you're basically a grandmother.
Yeah.
You're doing grandma porn. Yeah. At this point.
Now that we're out of the VHS age where you couldn't see it. VHS covered up a lot. No,
yes,
seriously.
4K and high def ruined everything, didn't they?
Yeah, there were former actresses who said, we were lucky we worked during the VHS era because we worked way longer than you can work now.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to specifically be doing, granny porn, I guess.
God, yeah.
Serious. I mean, it's terrible, but that's the reality of it.
Yep. So it's
I don't think it's good. I'm not saying this as
and honestly, you see the work. You see the work done on people. You see the things that they do to try to stay young, and you're like, oh god, like just the ways that we abuse our bodies to try to meet some sort of weird beauty standard. That's why when men started becoming obsessed with like the Marvel look, and you started getting all these stories about men doing all this weird shit to their bodies, my wife was like, good, let them suffer. She's like, women have been suffering forever. I'm like, okay, it's fair play.
Yeah.
Like, I think that Chris Evans as Captain America has done a lot for women, and not just looking pretty. I think he's also set off in a lot of men this desire to try to look like that, which is very hard. I'll say this: I work out a lot. And I look in the mirror and I always look at myself and I'm like, oh man, you look like a fat nerd. And that's how I think that's just how I see myself. But I'm a strong motherfucker. I mean, and I know that I'm a strong motherfucker because I have numbers on my side. But otherwise, when I look in the mirror, I'm not a superhero. I work out like crazy, and I just look in the mirror and I'm like, you doughy fuck, look at you. Well, it's true. I mean, it's just how I feel. But also, when I look around at other people my age, I realize that I'm shaped differently. I will accept that. But I don't look like Captain America. I work out a ton. I mean, my diet could use some work. I always say, it's the cookies. But like, I work out like crazy. I do all the stuff I'm supposed to do. And like, it's hard to look like that. And I don't necessarily... I said to my wife recently this idea of what you're willing. It's all about sacrifice for what you think may or may not be important, and like I could sacrifice things and look like that, right? But I don't necessarily need to look like that. What I want to be is mobile and strong and still enjoy life. And sometimes that involves fucking cookies, milkshakes, cakes, fucking ice cream. I mean, life is short. Don't starve yourself. What?
I really did hear that as having sex with cookies at first.
Oh man!
And sometimes that involves fucking cookies.
Listen,
I'm like, whoa.
Sometimes eating a cookie is like having sex with a cookie.
I thought maybe it was a euphemism I wasn't aware for the kids.
Having sex with a cookie. All these kids are fucking their cookies, man.
I didn't know if that meant,
Well,
listen,
hold on.
Chocolate
tossing your cookies.
What do I know?
Isn't tossing your cookies puking?
No, tossing salad.
No.
Salad tossed.
No, then what is it? There's a phrase with cookies that is puking.
Oh, yes. No, you're right. Just for throwing up. Yeah, I think it is. Is it tossing cookies or hurling cookies or?
I don't remember.
Hold on.
But either way, fucking cookies could be, or having sex with cookies could be a euphemism for something.
Now I must look up euphemisms for throwing up. Top 44 slang for throwing up. I didn't. Barf, puke, Ralph, blow chunks. Toss cookies. You're correct.
There you go. There, toss
there
your
it
cookies.
is.
There you see. I knew what that was.
Upchuck, spew, Technicolor Yawn. Ooh, I like that. I
Ooh,
Technicolor
that's
Yawned
a
last night.
good
I must have eaten a
one.
bad burrito. That's great.
Technicolor Yawn.
Lose one's lunch.
God. That
Chunder.
cultivates an image.
Chunder is a good one. That sounds like what it is. Wretch, chuck, barfing one's guts out. Pray to the porcelain god. Yeah, that's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Toss one's lunch. Okay.
Yep.
Worship the porcelain god. That's the same.
So the thing is, if you
rainbow,
can toss your cookies, then I imagine you can do other things with your cookies as well.
True. Feed the fishes.
You know?
Yeah, that's nautical. Yeah, I've heard that one. Talking to Ralph on the big white phone. Okay. Liquid laugh. Oh. That's not good at all. Anything else fun? Let's see. Now, these are all
I think Technicolor
variations.
Yawn is probably the highlight for me.
Blow the groceries. Okay. All right.
Holy God. I mean, honestly, the title of the show should be Technicolor Yawn at this point.
Yeah, it is now.
Woo! God, that's such imagery. But you know what? That's good, because I want to tell you about a place that Technicolor Yawn works for. So, I found something recently, and I have to go there now. Unfortunately, it's not in the U.S., so it's going to be some work. In the Netherlands, there is a museum called the Corpus Museum. Corpus. The interior of the museum is designed to look like the interior of the human body, and you basically walk through the body. Look it up. It is both gruesome and fucking awesome.
No, I've seen this before.
I need to go here.
I mean, I haven't been there, but it was covered on.
Apparently it was built in 08. And
yeah,
I hadn't heard of it.
The Atlas Obscura, I think, did an article on it.
Oh, did they? Yeah. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a kind of so. But they're like, I guess they're like a half hour out of Amsterdam. And I said to my wife recently, I was like, "Well, gotta go to Amsterdam now." I was like, "I gotta see this place." I was like, I just have to. It's just so weird, and the interiors look so fascinating. I was like, I gotta see this. There's a lot of other reasons to go to Amsterdam. Amsterdam's a really good Van Gogh museum. But yeah, I saw photos of this place. I was so tickled. Like I had like a childish glee when I saw it, because there's like the interior of the mouth, and it's like, but it's all big, so like there's giant teeth, and you're standing in. That's fucking awesome. It's one of those places where I sit there and I go, I'm gonna have to so curb my obscene humor. But yeah, it looks really cool. So I would like to go. Yeah, it's just so weird looking. So if you get a chance, look up the Corpus Museum, and like do like an image search for it, and you'll find some really gross stuff on there. That's cool. Yes.
Amsterdam
so I just wanted to mention
is in Holland, right?
It's in the Netherlands.
Oh, Netherlands. I'm sorry, I don't know anything about. I don't know anything. I really don't. I don't know where anything is,
dude. So
I mean,
my life project is to get Joe back to Italy.
I know where that is.
So I know that, but that's like my life project to get you back
because it looks like a boot. That's why I know.
Because it looks like a boot.
Well, I was trying to figure out how close the Netherlands is to Switzerland, but I can't tell.
There's some distance there, yeah.
Because I was going to say the other place to go would be the Giger Museum. You've never been to that, right?
No, I haven't. Yeah, is that in Switzerland?
That's in Switzerland, yeah.
Switzerland's on my list. I almost went there.
Well, if you ever go there, that's what I would say.
Oh my god! And the thing is, I'd go there. I'd go there with my kids. I don't know if I can handle a Geiger museum with my kids.
And there's a bar. The museum has the bar.
Yes, the Geiger bar, right?
All the spines and everything.
Yeah, no, that might be a.
Well, by the time you get there, your kids will be a little older. I mean,
you know, it's not that. It's the conversations I don't want to have with them. Dad, why does that look like a penis, Dad? Well, you know, there's the power.
Looks
of
like it is.
Yeah. Oh God, what did we watch recently?
Giger has the same amount of letters in his name as the word subtle, and the irony is, and then you keep going.
I love Giger.
Sorry,
I mean, that guy plugged into a dark fucking place of like carnal, just darkness. But I don't know if I want to share that with my children yet. Like, yeah. Either way, my life goal is to get Joe back to Italy. I'm always asking him. I'm always trying to convince him. We should go there. We should fly back there. We should see it. But like this is like trying to get a B.A. Baracus on a plane.
It really is.
I know that I'll have to drug him. I might have to kidnap him. I think that's honestly. Oh, Jesus Christ! That's what I should do. I should stage a fucking
just wake
kidnapping.
up there.
I'm gonna tell your wife. No, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna tell your wife.
Oh
right?
yeah, it's gonna be great for that first 2 minutes I'm awake where I'm trying to kill you.
And I'm like,
it's gonna be great.
I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna kidnap your husband. It's totally cool. Like we're gonna chloroform him. I was like, and then we'll just knock him out with some sort of powerful drugs. And when he wakes up, he'll be in Italy. No, because when you wake up, I'll have your wife in the room with you. And then she could be like, and she could be like, we haven't been kidnapped. Well, we have, but we're cool with it. We're in Italy. And then you'll be fine. And then honestly, you'll thank me.
Well, that's probably true.
But you know, it's the getting you there.
That's the getting me there.
I'll have to put you in a wheelchair and be like, oh, he's in a comatose state.
Yeah.
How do you transport somebody in that state? You'd need like medical documents for that, wouldn't it? Or
I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying. You know, and the thing is, if you look up how to kidnap your friends, I'm sure that'll raise red flags.
Yeah, you might be on a list. I would think.
God, but just think how delightful that'd be.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, yes. So, life goal is get you back to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
But I read a book and I wanted to talk about it. Going to seg into that because there's no real seg for that. So here we are. I finally finished this book and I want to talk about it because there's a lot of weird going on here. And at the same time, I actually think you might weirdly enjoy this for what it is. So
sure.
I like to read work by non-American authors. I try to make sure that I get a lot of non-American authors in the mix because where you grow up, where you live can have a profound effect on your point of view and the stories that you tell. This is an absolute truth.
Yeah.
So when the Cyberpunk, what is it, 2049? When the Project Red people who did the Cyberpunk 2077 decided to do, I guess they did a whole lot of like tie-in material, right?
Oh, is this Trauma Team?
No, I read that already. That was really fun. No, this is a book.
Okay.
This is a book. No, the Trauma Team book was actually quite interesting.
No, because I know somebody on Discord had said, "Oh, Lando will like all this stuff," and I wonder if this book is.
I reviewed Trauma Team. Do you remember that?
No, I did, but I thought there was some. Yeah. I wonder if this is. No, this person said, "Oh, yeah, he liked Trauma Team," so blah 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 blah.
Yes, this is a novel by I don't know if this is right, Rafat Kosik, who is a well-known Polish science fiction writer that I'd never heard of, which immediately kind of gets me interested, right? And the book is called No Coincidence, and it is a
Stanislaw Lem kind of like drowns everybody else out.
But
sorry, name of the
this
book
is like I think it's called. The book is called No Coincidence, by Rafat Kosik, and it is a cyberpunk. It takes place in the Cyberpunk 2077 world, right? So he's got the world set for him, and essentially this book is about a group of seemingly random people who are brought together to pull off a heist in the cyberpunk world, right? And they all come from different walks of life and have different skills. And then as the story goes on, these people realize that they all need money, and they try to basically work together outside of the person that brought them together in the first place, which really overcomplicates things for all of them, at which point they start to realize, wait a minute, is it really a coincidence that we're all working together? And the weird thing about this book is I read the first half of this book and then I put it down. Because one of the things that's weird about this book is it's written in a very sort of pop culture way. Like, so there are like six main characters, but then there's there's fucking like 12 point of view characters in this book, right? Which I'm not really used to. That's weird to me to have. But then every sections are really short. Some sections are only a page long, and that kind of screws me up as well because it's written in that kind of I know you don't have an attention span because you play Cyberpunk 2077. So I'm going to write this in such a way that you get these little narrative chunks into your head as quickly as I can. At times, I felt like I was reading almost like a screenplay, because there are sections of the book when the author is obviously trying to he's trying to get through something really quickly, and he's realized that he doesn't really need to describe it because the game is there. And I think that's kind of the thing, is that this book leans heavily on all the cyberpunk that's come before it. So if you've never read anything cyberpunk and you read this book, I think you're going to have a hard time understanding what the fuck's going on. Whereas if you're somebody who's played the game, or you're someone like me who's read a ton of cyberpunk, I can see the world. It makes total sense to me. All of it makes sense to me. Even the terms. I mean, they're using terms like ice, and there's it falls back on a lot of like Gibson and Snow Crash and shit like that, right? So I enjoy that, and that's part of why I picked this book up, because I thought that it would just be like a fun romp through a cyberpunk world, and to some degree it is. But like I said, I was thrown off by its kind of bite-sized status, which was weird to me. So I put it down, and I didn't read it again for 6 months. I don't know if you've had this, where you've put a book down for whatever reason, and then you kind of just lost it. And like, I do read a couple books at the same time, and it's very possible that I got sucked into something else, and that's why I didn't get back to it. But like, a week ago, I picked it up, and for some reason, it just fucking clicked, and I just burned through the rest of it. And I think that's because the first half of it is very sort of, you're kind of starting to get an idea of something's going on, something's weird, it's going on. And then by the end of the book, you're like, holy shit, everything's coming apart. But I think that you might enjoy this book. And I did not... There was a thing in this book, there's a twist at one point, and I was like, is that just thrown at you out of nowhere, or did he actually fucking give you the groundwork? And I actually went back and read a few scenes with one of the characters, and I was like, because there's a character named Zor, who later in the book you realize that he may not be who he thinks he is, right? And when that twist came, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, is this some shit you're throwing at me now? But then I went back and I read the previous. I'm like, no. I was like, I see the groundwork for this. And I like it because you're not necessarily attached to any of the main characters. You don't want bad things to happen to them necessarily, but you also are aware that nobody in this book is good per se. Zor is probably one of the characters you like the most because he appears to be a former military guy, and he just kind of wants to live his life, but he's got this whole revenge thing on his mind. And he comes off at first like your typical street samurai type. But then as the story goes on, you're like, no, there's more shit going on here for sure. It does get a little, I will say this, it does get a little bit Philip K. Dick towards the end, which I was impressed with. I had a lot of fun with that. And then there's a character in the book named Albert who is a baseline hacker, like a net runner, and he is obsessed with becoming pure information. He wants to become essentially like an AI, and there's a huge amount of this. I feel bad because he's supposed to be running, he's supposed to be doing network for this crew, but he's basically kind of conned them all into getting all this equipment, and he's giving them the most minimal effort while he's trying to figure out how to essentially transcend his body. And it's such a weird part of the story because, like, no one really knows what he's up to. He's, like, totally plugged. He's completely plugged into a suit. So he's totally in cyberspace. He barely comes out anymore. And he's giving them, like, 1/10 of his focus, which annoys everybody, but they also don't have anybody else. And meanwhile, he's pulling on, like, massive computation power from all sorts of different things, trying to figure out, like, how to essentially become... I mean, essentially, he wants to become an AI, and so there's some really heavy shit in there towards the end with this guy trying to figure out how to upload his consciousness, and how much of his consciousness does he need to upload, and how much of it will really be him. And then like he starts to cut corners because he's like, I don't have the time for this, and like it's funny because you're reading him and he's thought about all this shit. But then there are kind of these glaring stupidities where you're like, wait a minute, man, what about this? And like it never gets mentioned. And you're like, well, is this just a plot hole? And then you get to this moment in the book where like he appears to have created and triggered this possibly triggered this consciousness, this AI consciousness recording of himself, right? Except he's still in his body. And he's sitting there going, well, shit, I never thought about this part. He goes, what happens to me? He's like, I created this copy. He's like, but the hell do I do now? He's like, I'm just here in my fucking body. He's like, and I don't want to die. He's like, well, fuck me. And it's like, and I'm sitting there going, you didn't think about this? And you're like, no, he's this young asshole who's so focused on this singular purpose that he never sat to fully consider the full ramifications of it. And there's a lot of stuff like that feels very human. So I actually, like I said, the beginning of the book was slow enough that I put it down, but then the second half of the book, I was so sucked in to all these different people in their lives, and you know, I was not surprised by the way it ended. I was surprised by where certain people ended up and who ended up being, like, there's a thing in there where there's a corporate woman who's working with this team. And early on, she's such a bitch. And you're like, fuck this woman. But then as the book goes on, she's probably the most noble of the bunch. And like, I felt genuinely bad when, you know, she didn't make it. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, I mean, she does some shit in this book that I was early on in the book. I was like, I didn't think she'd do that. But it's this very sort of natural, organic, human evolution of these people and how they interact with each other and what's important. And then, you know, what they realize they've lost at some point or another, they can't get back. It was a really good book. And I enjoyed seeing somebody with literary prowess play around in the cyberpunk world. You know, it's an interesting world. It's built on the backs of all the cyberpunk novels that we love. So to watch somebody then take this archetypal, stereotypical universe that's been created and say, okay, now I'm going to play in it. It was really enjoyable. It was really enjoyable. Enough so that I was like, shit, I want to find some more stuff by this guy and see what he tends to lean to. Because, I mean, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that he writes cyberpunk. And I can't find any English translations of his shit. It's all in Polish, which is really sad because I like to read a lot of work by non-American authors to get sort of these alternate points of view. And it does feel different. It feels like it's got different aspirations. Also, remember that a while back we were talking about that thing that what Gibson said, where it's like cyberpunk was never meant to be an aspiration. It was meant to be like a warning. Yeah. The way he writes this, it's very much like that. This world is not a nice world. It's not nice. It's not great. If you're filthy rich and corporate, then yeah, it's fucking awesome. It's great. I mean, you could be killed at any time, but you have nice things. But it's a dying world. It's a dying world, and there are lots of bad places. And because he gives you as many points of view as he does, there's things in there where even some of like the bad guys, you start to understand their point of view, even though they're not good. You're like, oh man, I was like, I get what you've lost. So like at one point, the main group pulls off a heist in another gang's territory, which really pisses them off. And they this other gang starts pursuing them. And the three people in charge have this software that connects them to each other. So they basically speak through their thoughts to each other, right? And the three of them are very tight, and they're hunting all through the book. And when they finally kind of catch up with some of them, with the main characters, there's a big shootout, and two of the three are killed. And the third one, the survivor, is so like ruined because for the first time in years, his head is silent. He's lost these two people that he's shared his thoughts with. And because you have his point of view, you know, you almost feel bad for him, even though, you know, he is a, at times, monstrous murderer. There's the sort of humanity of his point of view. So yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed it in the end way more than I thought I was gonna. It was not the simple romp through a cyberpunk world I thought it was going to be. It was actually quite a fascinating cyberpunk novel. So I wanted to bring it to your attention because, I mean, I thought you might enjoy this. Like I said, there's sort of a Philip K. Dickness to the end of it. And everybody's doing their own shit. I mean, there's a point in this book where the netrunner, Albert, is running out of processing power and realizes that one of the guys has a chip in his head that he could use to process more shit through. So he starts trying to keep that guy within the range of essentially of his systems so that he can use the processor in the guy's head. Whereas this guy is trying not to get killed by drones, but the netrunner doesn't care. And he's just in there going, no, it's okay. Just hang out, man. Just hang out. And you're like, Jesus Christ. But everybody's running their own life. So it's, I didn't expect the level of sort of honest humanity, kind of both good and bad to the book. But yeah, his name is Rafat Kosik, and I'd love to see if I could get some more English translations of his work. But in the meantime, No Coincidence is actually a very fascinating cyberpunk book, not just a cheap video game tie-in.
It sounds interesting.
It is. I mean, I because you've got all these different characters going in so many different directions, and everyone's got a point of view. And at first, like I said, it was kind of jarring to me. But then everyone's got a point of view. So like there almost is no main characters because you're watching all these different people go through, you know, it's almost like you're learning about an event rather than the narrative of an individual. You know, so there's like a cop who comes in about like I'd say comes in about 15-20% of the way, and then he's like pursuing the main like heist group throughout the story. But because as he's uncovering more information about them, that's uncovering more information about other things, and then suddenly he goes from kind of being this adversary to having his own story where he's trying to find out what's going on, and the corporations get involved, and suddenly his story goes in a very different direction, and you're like, oh, okay. And there's a lot of that where you think it's going one way, and then something happens and you're like, oh, I didn't see this just turning off in that direction. It's not that it makes sense. You just didn't expect it, you know? And I enjoy that. I enjoy shit like that. So like, yeah, I told you there's those three, like, you know, gang guys who have this, they speak with, they're all linked together. Well, at one point they kidnap this little girl and they're using her as kind of like they're keeping her ransom for something they want from the main characters. But at one point the guy she doesn't speak and she seems very sort of timid, and he puts the program in her head that allows them to talk to her. And the second they do, she becomes so happy and receptive to kind of be there, to the point of which later in the book, when the other characters try to rescue her, she doesn't want to leave. Because this is the first time she's kind of been directly communicating with people. And I'm like, oh, fuck me. I was like, I didn't see that coming. Like, so yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I'm always surprised when a video game tie-in doesn't suck. And to have it actually be good is like, oh wow, that's different. So yeah, I think you might enjoy this. It's weird. But the world will be familiar to you. You know, this could be you've played the game too, right?
Yeah, I played the game. Yeah.
Yeah, so the world will be very familiar to you. But sure. I like the fact that he doesn't try to shine it. He doesn't try to be like, it's so cool. Like, no. It's a gritty,
well, the game doesn't make the world look cool, so I don't know why a book would.
Well, they're good. Yeah. See, I haven't played the game, so I don't know if they tried to like cool it up a bit.
Well, it looks neat when you see it kind of from a distance, but in the actual world, everybody looks miserable.
Yeah. And that's
it's like at the street level, it's dirty and grimy and miserable.
Yes, and that's the thing. Is at the street level, which is where a lot of this book takes place, it is quite grimy.
Yeah.
And people are
unless you're
trying to get out.
Super rich or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to mention that. I read it. I enjoyed it. If you are looking for cyberpunk, honestly, you know what's weird is I'd almost put this as like a nice entry level cyberpunk novel, because it's it's full of all of this sort of stereotypes and ideas.
Well,
that if
the
you were
game's like that. The game's entry level cyberpunk too. I mean, it is literally just surface level in most of its stuff.
So if you want to get into cyberpunk, but you're worried about reading Neuromancer or something like that, read this. Read this as an opener. You know, I was hoping for a more hopeful ending, but you get to that point in the book, much the same way I get to in a Philip K. Dick book, where you're like, oh, this isn't gonna work. I was like, these guys are fucked. Okay, right, I see where this is going, and you're kind of, and you have time to prepare yourself for it. Where you're like, oh, I see where this is going. Okay, yep, that makes sense. There's two characters that end up together, and then one of them gets killed, and the other one's like, well, life is meaningless now. And I was like, she's not gonna make it. No, she's not gonna make it.
Oh, I got it. The light at the end of the tunnel is a train. Got it.
Yeah. Oh, and then it is a train. It is a train for a lot of them. Yeah. And I do like it that there's stuff through a lot of the book that makes no sense to you. You're reading it, and you're like, what? Who are they? Like, there's these operators they keep coming back to that are obviously running some sort of program, and you regularly come back to them, and they're never given names. They're called Operator 1, 2, and 3. And through the course of the book, they're fucking arguing with each other about what's going on, and this op isn't running right. And I knew that it was important, but I never quite knew what it was. And then in the book, when you realize what they're running and what they're doing, you're like, oh, you sons of bitches. And I like that. I like that it's this, I don't want to call it a gag, but it's like this idea that gets pulled through the whole book, but it doesn't make sense till near the end. But yeah, you get yourself ready when you realize that, yeah, oh shit, these people things are going to work out the way they think it is. And I love the phrase cyberpsychosis. Is that something that you hear in the game, cyberpsychosis?
Oh yeah, no, you have to go after a series. The game, the best parts of the game are not the main part; it's all the side stuff. And at one point, you have to hunt down, I want to say 14 people who are afflicted by it, and they're all different. Okay. One of them is clearly Kusanagi. I mean, it's so obviously Motoko Kusanagi. They obviously can't use the name, but it is Motoko Kusanagi. But yeah, you hunt them down. Each of them has some kind of thing that made them, and usually they're actually very tragic figures. Almost all of them aren't bad people. You find out after the fact that something was done. Like one guy got sick, and he went to like a cyber clinic, and they said, "Oh yeah, we can fix you up," and we could, and they put all this stuff in him, and then he got a bill that his insurance wouldn't cover, and then everything started going crazy, and so he just started killing executive. I mean, this is kind of, I guess, presaging modern times. But I think he was hunting down like CEOs or something, and so the cop, no, I know, right? But the interesting part is, and this is the true fiction, the cop who has you going after all these people, her thing is, don't kill them unless you have to. I'd prefer to have them alive. And I'm like, well, that's definitely a variation on the theme. So yeah, then she'll talk about, all this stuff that's terrible that happened to them. So, but that's the neat stuff is the side stories, not the main stories. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, this then probably will read like a side mission. Except the fact that there's no one. I come to like that. There's no main character. There's a whole bunch of main characters, but then you have a whole bunch of point of view characters, and there's so many, but everybody has some kind of story. So like nobody ends up in the same place. Yeah. So yeah, it's good. I mean, and some people's stories end abruptly, and some people's stories get all the way through. And like the guy who mind speaks to his friends, he does lose his friends, but then he gets a kind of revenge. And the thing is that because everyone's going in their own direction, people arbitrarily end up changing the storylines of other people, but not realizing. So like there's a bad guy that may have actually saved the entire city by shutting a program down, but he didn't know what he was doing. He just saw something and was like, that looks bad, and just closes it. And you're like, oh, dude, I think you just saved the city.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fun read. What is this like? Let's see, what is this? 403 pages. It's a nice length. And I do like their they do these neat covers. Like the book is like bright yellow, and I like it when it has that sandpapery feel to the paper, like this nice matte varnish or whatever they put on it.
Right.
So yeah, it was good. You know what? I like this book enough that if I found out there was like a leather-bound version of it, I might buy it because it's one of those ones that I might come back to this at some point. And I'd be fuck off curious to hear this as an audiobook. Because what would make this book work is if every point of view character was read by a different person, that would be an amazing project.
Sure.
You know, my wife actually asked me why I didn't try doing that for my audiobook for the Artificial Fear. And I was like, well, I don't know enough people that I could have read that because really I've got you, me, and my wife, and that's only 3 characters.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're one short. Yeah, we're one short. I'd need one more person to read. But either way, yeah, it's I would love to have this book read and that way the jumps wouldn't be so bad because you'd instantly know who is talking because it'd be the different voices. Right? But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I thought I had something else. Oh, actually, and this kind of segs really quick into a very brief thing I want to talk about. Did you read this article about Netflix and their distracted viewing?
Yes, I did.
Now,
yeah.
Here's the thing. I'm not saying it's true. But you know when you read something and you think that sounds plausible? So supposedly there's
no.
Yeah.
I not
you
only
believe it?
because it dovetails with a lot of anger over Spotify's AI generated playlist because Spotify came out and said, yeah, people don't actually listen to music. They just need background noise, which is kind of true sometimes.
Okay, hold on. You know. Sometimes that's true. Listen,
but they're saying
playlists.
that most of the playlists getting played are those. That it's not individual artists. And so they're saying, why would we pay anybody?
Yeah, and that's the thing is that when I have built playlists, when I build playlists, I have playlists that are specifically for things. So like I have a playlist called Digital Quiet, and it's basically background digital music for when I'm doing things. I have a playlist that's called Fantasy of Purpose, and I use it to write to because it essentially gives me sort of a soundtrack to writing, right? But then I have a whole bunch of playlists that I listen to intently, that I'm quite, you know, and so it's like, yes, people do use music as for the background, but people also do, you know, it's like, I don't think you can broad brush it either way. But for those who don't know, there was an article that was written about how essentially, supposedly Netflix has realized that a lot of people only kind of half watch a lot of TV. So they have tried to put money into movies that are better suited for, I think they called it second screen viewing.
Yes.
Which is the idea that
you're staring at your phone, you have a TV on in the background.
Yeah, you have a TV on in the background, or
and the TV is the second screen.
Yeah, or whatever you're doing, the TV is not the primary. You're on Facebook on your computer, and the TV's on, or you're watching TV on your phone while you're doing something else. I mean, fuck. I just watched the entire Arcane series on my phone. But I didn't do that because I was distracted. In fact, if anything, I was fucking focused. But I also don't think that Arcane, because the argument some people made in the article was that that Netflix is a varied company, and so they are going to put out all kinds of shit, and that's, some shit is going to be, meant for paying close attention, and some shit is meant for, half watching. And the thing is, I kind of understand it because there are times when I'm watching TV with my wife, and she half watches a lot of shit.
Yeah,
like especially if we're watching some. Yeah, especially if we're watching that she's not fully interested in. Yeah. She'll be looking at her. I mean, she's doing this thing now where she's trying to delete everything on her Facebook account. So apparently there's something in there where you can't fully delete your Facebook account until everything in your Facebook account has been deleted.
Yeah, I read about that. I don't know if that's really true or not, but I read about it.
Well, I don't know about that, but she's trying to do it. So she's basically deleting everything and everything, any reference to her as well. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? If that's what you can do. But she does it while we're watching stuff that she's kind of half watching. And I'm like, okay, you get it. And I get that. whereas like I've always been an intense TV watcher, where it's like if I'm watching something, I'm fucking watching it. I'm intent because you might miss things. You know, I also don't need the what do you call it? You know when they do the recaps? I don't need recaps. I know what happened.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. One of my favorite things is the Plex server added the ability to skip the recap, which I'm so grateful for. It can detect it now, and it's like, oh, good, skip. Yeah. Thanks.
I'm honestly, I do like the recaps for Star Trek, the Strange New Worlds, because my kids fish shit. And when they do the recaps for certain episodes, they specifically tell you what you need to remember from certain episodes, which I'm like, good, that's good, because my kids weren't fully paying attention. So let them know exactly what they should keep in mind when we watch this episode, because they kind of pick and choose the important things. I do like that. That does not feel like a lazy recap. That feels like a very sort of overt, specific recap that I enjoy. That it's like, okay, you're not just saying, hey, this is what happened in the last episode. They're like, no, sometimes this is what happened in like 6 different episodes. We've just cut that out so you understand that these things are important to watch this.
Yeah. Well, that's different. There are recaps that are pointing out this episode is about this stuff.
Yeah.
But the ones where it's literally the episode you just watched, most people don't watch single episodes anymore, so it doesn't really make sense.
And the thing is, and I even do, I don't binge watch, but I remember what happened because I was sitting there paying attention to it. So it is very funny that Netflix is sitting there going, you know what, people aren't really fucking paying attention. Let's just dump some of this shit down. Well, we don't need to put so much.
It lines up with that Spotify thing.
Oh, and my favorite is the line in there about how we want your characters to say out loud what they're doing. So if people get lost, they can kind of, be brought back in by the character being like, well, I had a lovely day yesterday. It was so nice. And we went out on our date and had such a good time. And now we're going to do this. And I was reading this and I was like, oh, God, that sounds awful.
Well, I mean, I don't know why they have to be told that. That's happened forever.
Yeah.
Because look, Doug and I were reviewing some of the Star Trek films, and there's parts where they're like, okay, people who've never watched science fiction, here's what's going to happen now. Where anybody who watches science fiction, you know exactly where it's going, but they have to have a character say, oh, we're going to do time travel now. So.
You mean time travel? This is the Riker thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Which movie was that? Where he says that? Where he's like, you mean... Dun, dun, dun,
First Contact. That's where Data says they're creating a temporal inversion, and then Riker just stands up and goes, time travel. It's the dumbest thing.
Yeah, he's like, my dick is hard, guys. It's time travel. I say that from a place of love, too. I love Riker. My kids met Riker through Lower Decks before they actually met him on Next Generation.
I'm very sure that a lot of people... there's a whole generation of younger viewers who only know who will not, if you were to show the Next Gen would say, oh, that's the guy from Lower Decks. That's what they'd say, not from Next Gen.
Yeah, they
stuff.
Saw Riker a few times in Lower Decks, and they really liked him because they play up his, his brash captain personality, right? And
no,
so
I
when
was
he
reading
showed
a thing about Prodigy where there were some viewers who said, oh, they should make a whole character about the Janeway character. They should make a show about her. And of course they did.
Like, they fucking did, guys. Yeah, nobody watched it.
But these are kids, so
I know.
They're kids.
And honestly, and Voyager's in our list. Like when we finish Next Gen, I will watch Voyager with the kids because they will get a lot more out of it than I will. But when
kids,
Riker
wait till you hate Neelix.
Yeah, I know. When Riker shows up, and he's skinny and young and has no beard. And they're like, what's wrong with Riker? I'm like, he's fucking young, guys. I was like, this is pre-beard Riker. And he's such a hornball, too. I forgot that in the first season. Where, when they go to the sex planet, and Riker is just fucking thrilled. Anyway, yeah, so... But the fact that Netflix is doing it doesn't worry me because it does create this kind of air of, you know what, we need to dumb this down a little bit. I'm kind of sitting there going, well, do we really? I mean, shouldn't we keep it at a certain level of quality and kind of usher people to pay attention? Or am I wrong and say no? Give the people what they want. They want to watch gladiators be eaten by tigers in the Colosseum. Give them tigers, right? Is that Are you not entertained? Maybe I'm wrong for saying that we should try and raise the quality of it. But I mean, isn't that what? What's his name? Scorsese was complaining about Marvel that way, where he was like, "Oh, these fucking superhero movies they're just lowering the tone." You know what I mean? I just figure if you're not paying attention, what's the point?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know. I mean, honestly, I didn't know that about Spotify. Is there any way to fix that with Spotify where they actually give you fucking music?
Well, no. Okay. No. This wouldn't apply to you.
Okay.
Because you're.
I haven't used Spotify, so you're gonna have to walk me through this like an idiot.
Oh no! It's the same as anything else. You make playlists, and where is it? So basically there are playlists. I can't remember what one's called. Like Casual Jazz Cafe is one, like stuff like that, and many of those are not. They're not being made by people anymore. They're literally just like you've seen these on YouTube.
I have a folder. So have you Chill Hop, right?
Yeah.
I have a whole folder with about like 1,000 songs on it from Chill Hop.
Right. Okay. But if you open up YouTube, most of the time you'll see these things that says like neon ambient sleep mix.
Yes,
right?
yes, I've seen that, yeah.
It's that, except nobody's making it anymore. They're just feeding it into one of these AI music synthesizing things and having it spit out. Which
is funny because there have been times where I've listened to some of those mixes where they tell you who the titles of the songs are and like who the people are. And I have actually found a few bands I really fucking like through that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you hear stuff that's like, paint drying on the walls, and then sometimes you hear stuff and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, that's fucking awesome. I was like, who made this?
There's stuff I like too.
And, I'm more inclined, I don't want the AI to just spit out random tonal shit for me.
Yeah.
AI.
Well, some people do. Some people don't pay attention. They don't care. And I think it's the same thing. People put stuff on Netflix just to have... Well, I think for some people, it's like a comfort thing. It's just to have something in the background that's not their phone.
Yeah, I suppose. Listen, when I lived alone
live different lives. I don't know.
During graduate school, I used to put the Lord of the Rings extended editions on with the cast commentary in the background.
Yeah.
Well, I was working on stuff because...
lately I've been going to sleep to Scrap Heap Challenge. I find it comforting.
What?
Yeah, because normally, I go to bed and I'll put on like one episode, and kind of towards the end I start drifting off, and that's fine because it's not...
What is Scrap Heap Challenge?
The Junkyard Wars, where they have to build stuff out of the junkyards.
Well, I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah, well, the original UK version, which has the better presenters.
So it's fighting robots. You go to sleep to fighting robots.
No. That's Robot Wars.
Okay.
Junkyard Wars was the Americanized version of Scrap Heap Challenge. Scrap Heap Challenge is started in the UK, and the original host, one of them, was Crichton from Red Dwarf, Robert Llewellyn.
Oh, okay.
And basically, there's two teams, and they're generally actual engineers or smart people, not, celebrities. As far as I know, there were either none or very few ever celebrity episodes. Most of the time, it is people. For example, I just watched one, and the idea was, okay, you need to build a vehicle that can do 3 tests on real railroad tracks. And so you had to do it was a combination. Points added up for being the fastest, being able to pull a load, and
using junk essentially.
Well, it's obviously they have the stuff in the junkyard, but they basically don't know what's in there. And so you have to assemble something. And so one team was an actual group of railroad engineers, and the other was like a construction company or something. They obviously have some knowledge. You don't just take somebody who knows nothing about it.
And that sounds interesting. No, it sounds interesting.
Yeah, and they did like 11 seasons or 9 seasons of it, I think.
Wow. Okay.
And it's on you, and a lot of it's on YouTube. So I'll put one of those on because.
So that's your Top Gear.
Yeah, it reminds me of when the Science Channel had science. It's that era of television. And so it is interesting. And then, the last 10, 15 minutes is the testing of it, so I can fall asleep during that, and it's okay.
Yeah, when I can't sleep, I put old Top Gear episodes on because I've seen them all so many times that and plus they're reviewing cars I don't give a shit about. So I just get like a lull from it.
Yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, usually it's that, and then I go to sleep.
So So with Spotify, what are people then annoyed about it? Is that that they have these smooth,
Well,
they have these mixes that are.
I think it's musicians who are annoyed. People who don't like
Okay.
AI stuff are annoyed. Not, I think the people using it don't care. That's what they're using. I don't think most people know that's what they're listening to, but I also don't think they'd care if they did know.
Well, does
What
it
the
say
problem
who
is-
the artist and the song is at all times?
I don't think it does. I just think it says either. That's a good question. I don't know who it lists as the artist. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can see what the credits are.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because like I always like to know who the songs are so I can go find them.
I don't know who it lists it as. Here we go. Let's see. Here's the article. Oh, they removed the article? Really? Okay, hold on. Oh, the article's removed.
That's
hold
not good.
on. That's okay. No. Okay, AI generated music podcast. Oh yeah, I heard the podcast. It's awful. This is. I don't care about this. Where is? Of course, I can't find it now. Where it actually. I don't know what the credit is. Oh wait. Here it is. Spotify is paying for AI generated knockoffs. Yeah, what are they? That's the interesting part. Is what is the dedicated category for AI generated music? Okay. Does it say who the? Oh, apparently it's actually called AI music, I guess.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I don't know if you would notice that. Oh no, here it is. Spam releases. No, they are actually imitating other artist names. So no, they actually have artist names and they look like they're real and they're not.
They look like they're
Yeah.
real people.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the artist
Jeez.
who I found through one of these like weird YouTube streaming things that I then located, because I really like their music. And oh, there's a Mire. It's Mire period. They have two songs, one called Envy and one called Berry, and I fucking love them. And I found them through one of those weird, like, hey, it's a cyberpunk playlist type shit. And
Yeah.
they luckily they listed the songs, and I was able to find them. And so it's like I'm always looking for new places to track music down from. Creating recycled music. Oh, so okay,
Yeah.
'cause
So,
it's
so
AI,
see,
they
those are
can't-
all the same song.
Yeah. Oh no shit.
Well, okay,
Whoa.
they're not the same song, but the same loops. And the guy's like,
Yeah.
one of the people said, the fact that they're all 1 minute long exactly is suspicious.
Hey, my name's Caden Schroeder, and this is Jane
Yeah.
Martin, and this is Joint Devil.
The artist photos are all stock photos, somebody said. Yeah.
Clem Moore,
Yeah.
Ewan Willis, Theo Davidson,
Oh my
Slow
yeah.
Spectator.
Man, if you read that thread, these people started going Inspector Gadget on this whole thing, and boy, did they find some stuff. Wow.
Jesus.
Stream farming, that's what they call it.
Stream farm. Yeah, I mean, and the sad thing is that corporations are turning to AI, or let's not call it
Yeah.
AI. They're turning to machine learning because they can fire people and they can bring in more money and they can get
Of
rid
course.
of creatives, and it's depressing because
Yeah.
what do non-rich folk have at this point beyond their artistic ability? And isn't that the thing at this point? Like,
That's the one thing.
right? You can do what you want, but just because you're rich doesn't mean you can fucking draw, or you can play music, or you can
Nope.
write a novel.
But if you can if you get a machine to tell you you created something, sir, then you can fool yourself into thinking you did.
not even that. If you sit there and go, I want some pretty music, machine learning, make me some pretty music. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
But you still need. Well, you don't need. I mean, that's the funny thing, and it goes back to the idea that I saw there's that joke that has been going around, where it's the whole when I heard of AI, I wanted AI to do all the boring shit so the rest of us could focus on art and living,
Right.
and it's the art and living that the AIs are going to do for us, so we can all just be mired in the fucking boring shit. It's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So no, you know what? I find that I've become I've become a non-supporter of machine learning, but not mainly because I don't like what corporate America wants to do with it.
Well, that's
the
thing.
It's the whole I'm not necessarily against atomic energy. It's just that every time they make advancements in atomic energy, they're always like, well, really they're advancements on how to destroy each other. You know what I mean? It's like it's the whole we can't get one without the other. It's like we there's this new invention and they're like, oh cool, how can we make this a weapon? How can we use this to control people and make money? And you're like, great, but can't we do something good with it too? I mean, the good thing would be nice. And they're like, no, fuck that, fuck the good thing. Let's just make more money off of this. So yeah, I like how financially we're just gonna fucking destroy ourselves. It'll be the last oligarchs hiding in their bunkers going, I have so much money, as the world slowly fucking dies around them. Snowpiercer. Yeah. Because the guy, wasn't that the, he was basically like an oligarch type. Ed Harris's character in the front of the train.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, that's all I have brought to the table. What, sir, have you got?
I finished Skeleton Crew.
Oh, fucking hell. Let me tell you.
Did you finish it?
I can't get my kids to keep watching it.
Really?
So we got halfway, and I thought, I think it's really great. And I think my son likes it. But my daughter was like, fuck this. And I was like, really? I was like, there's fucking pirates in space. And I think my wife and I think that she's spaceshipped out. Because we're watching Firefly and Star Trek and Doctor Who.
Sure.
But I mean, like, she just has my daughter had like a total lack of interest in pursuing it, and my son liked it, but not enough to put up a fight. So I was like, oh shit! I was like, that's weird. So no, I haven't had a chance to. I mean, I want to finish it. I haven't had a chance. So what do you think?
I think, if you remember, my concern is always with these shows that what happens when they get to the ending. And in particular with Star Wars, the problem is that they have this tendency to run back to the stuff.
Jedi Luke Skywalker it?
Yeah, right. And remember how we were talking about, you're like, no, he's not a Jedi, and you were sure he wasn't a Jedi, right? Because
he said he wasn't a Jedi.
He says that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the booby trap?
Oh, no, don't say.
Yeah. Okay, so, now, so, all right, let me, I watched 4 episodes in a row last night because the 5, 6, and 7 are like 30 minutes. They're quick. And then the last one is 45. So it's actually pretty short to burn through these. And I legitimately could not figure out where the show was going because it started throwing all this old Star Wars stuff, and I'm going, we're in trouble now.
Like old Republic stuff.
Yes. So the one that we last talked about is the one. I think you saw this. Did you see the one where the robot starts to go crazy and has to be deactivated? Did you see that one? No.
Yeah.
All right.
I did see that.
So next one is we cut back to the parents, and the parents keep being told they can't do anything. They can't leave the barrier. There's the thing around the planet. So it starts out, the parents are trying to figure out how they can send a message to the kids because they're afraid that the kids are going to think that they're not looking for them because they can't leave the planet. So they're trying to cobble together because they realize that the robots are they're sort of prisoners and they don't really know what's going on, but it's become very obvious to them that the supervisor's not responding. The planetary government doesn't want to help them. And so they're trying to figure out how to help the kids. So they come up with this plan that there is a way for them to launch a transmitter into past the barrier so that it can send a message. And so they're in the background. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to be clever about it. Meanwhile, SM-33 they tie him up because because he's the only one who knows. I think at this point, he's the only one who knows the location of the planet. So they still need to have him on, but they can't risk him killing them. So they activate him, and they say, you have to promise not to kill us. So he's like, oh, yeah, that was just the last of the programming from my old captain. I wouldn't have actually killed you. And so they're like, oh, okay. And he says, and so they're like, okay, well, where is, so Jod, or Jude, says to him, what's this treasure that you were talking about, this mystic treasure? And he's like, oh, well, that was the treasure that my last captain, Tack Rened. And when he says this name, Jude pops way up and he's like, what? Because apparently his old captain is like a Blackbeard legendary super pirate of, the universe, and disappeared like a One-Eyed Willie type. And so now he's all in on, no, we got to reactivate it. We got to find where this treasure is. Where did he hide it? And so Smee's like, oh, okay, I'll tell you where it is. I know the planet exactly. And he just kind of gets up and rips all of his bonds out so he could have killed them all instantly. And he's like, all right, we'll go to the planet. And they go to the planet. And funny you mentioned Ryza, because this pirate planet, what it used to be a pirate planet, it's been converted into essentially Ryza. So they get there, and it's basically an adult pleasure spa. That's what they call it. Because when they get there, they're told kids aren't allowed. It's for our services are geared towards adults. I mean, you don't see any nudity or anything, but that's what it is. So they get there, and they basically dress up the kids so they can't see that they're kids. And Jude shows up and says, "Oh yeah, I'm here with these respected elders, but they can't speak basic, so I'll talk for them." And he's going blah, 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 whatever, making fun.
Are they wearing like fake beards and shit? Out of curiosity?
No, they're just wearing all kinds of like facial like coverings and robes and big hats and stuff. No, not they. I thought they were all going to be on each other's shoulders. I thought it was going to be one of those things. I really did. So. So anyway, they find, because Smee's like, no, this is the right planet. Because at first Jude's like, you got your stuff mixed up. And he's like, no, this is the planet. They just built all this on top of it. So he's like, it's got to be down underneath the ground. It's got to be in the ground somewhere. And so they're finding their way down. And, then the people on the planet, like the guards, start to become suspicious and figure out something's not right. And so they go into the bowels of the planet. And then it becomes the Goonies, like purely, where it's like, okay, there's puzzles and traps and all this stuff. Like it literally is the Goonies when they're in the lair, where they're trying to. There's an acid pool, and then it becomes kind of like what do you call it? The Last Crusade, where they have to figure out the meaning of things. And so they find their way into the basement, and it again, just like One-Eyed Willie, there's all this treasure, and Jude's like, don't touch anything. All this has got to be booby trapped, right? So they're looking around, and they basically pull a Cup of a Carpenter thing where he's like, look for something that doesn't belong. And one of the kids spots that there's all this food that's rotted, but there's one piece of food that looks pristine. And so Jude kind of touches it and opens it. It reveals this data port that Smee can plug into. And he's like, okay, find out what the treasure is and where it is. And of course, what it is it's the planet, because the planet is the only remaining mint where you make money for the old republic. And it has, remember in the Addams Family where they go down and they see the vault with all the treasure in it? He's like, it's like that for money. It's just filled with money. And of course, Jude now is like, okay. And so he grabs Fern, puts a knife to her throat, and says, yield and give me the ship or I'll kill you. And so Wim sees that there's a lightsaber and grabs it and tries to activate it, and it almost kills him and like shoots across the room. And Jude sees it and like force grabs it and puts it on his belt. And then, but basically he makes what's-her-face yield to him, and so now he's the captain. And he says to Smee, he's like, all right, take them prisoner, they're mutinous. So the robot goes to grab them because now he works for Jude. And they go through a booby trap, and they go through this long tunnel chute that deploys them. They shoots them out like onto the planet's like waste disposal, whatever, right? So they go out there. Meanwhile, Wolfman and the pirates show up, and they manage to get Jude and Smee.
That's a great band right there,
isn't Wolfman it? Right, Brutus and the Pirates, Wolfman and the Pirates. Yeah, so he shows up. They manage to get the drop on Jude. They short circuit Smee. They grab them both, and they're bringing him back, and they're going to execute him. Right. So the kids are on the ground, and they're way far away from the ship. They see the ship, it's way up, and so they're trying to figure out how they're going to get to it. And they kind of, KB, the cyber girl, and the main girl, Fern, get into this big argument, and they basically like, fine. Fern's like, I'm going with Elephant Boy. I don't remember what his name is. She's like, I'm going with him. We're going to climb up there. And Wim is like, well, I'm going to stick with Cybergirl, and we're going to try to find our way with these robots that seem to be friendly. There's all these little like crab robots, and they seem to be nice. So he's like, we're going to go with them. They probably know a better way up. And so they split up, and they're locking up. So we're cutting back between the two of them, and Cybergirl and Wim, I think his name is Wim, right? Yeah, Wim. Wim are walking along, and Cybergirl suddenly collapses and says, yeah, my augments are shorting out and I can't move. And I forgot she was in some kind of major bike accident, they tell you that in the first episode, I think, but I forgot all about it. But she says, yeah, when I was in the bike accident, they had to replace part of my brain, and it runs off of this, I don't know, some kind of machinery. And there's like a power rod. Remember when Scorpius would overheat?
Cooling rods.
Yeah, it's like that, except it's a metal rod. So it's almost like something that gets used up and burns out and has to be replaced. And so Wim has to make her a new one. And as they're making it, he says, is this why you didn't want to go up the ladder? Because you knew you couldn't make it? And she says, yeah. And he's like, well, why don't you just tell her that? And she says, yeah, the thing about Fern is she just assumes that I can do all the same things she can, and I don't want to tell her that I can't because I was in the accident. And he's like, I'm sure she would have understood. And she's like, yeah, sometimes she sees the reality she wants to. And so he puts the thing back in, and she reactivates, and she's fine. And so they're going along, and they think the robots are friendly, and then they realize that the robots are bringing them to this giant creature to be eaten. And so they're like, uh-oh, this giant crab thing comes out of the ground. Meanwhile, Fern and Elephant Kid make it to the ship. They manage to get onto it, and there's these things that are bringing it to where it's going to be, I guess they just trash ships that are left behind on this planet, which seems very wasteful, but that's what they do. So they manage to get control of it, but it still gets dropped. And on the way, they manage to grab Cybergirl and Wim. The ship gets dropped, and they're trying to restart it as this giant trash machine starts to destroy it. So it's actually, and I was actually really curious at this point because I'm sitting here going, that front of the ship is wrecked. If they take off, it's going to implode. How are they going to get out of this? So what they do is there's a button that Smee had said, never touch this button no matter what happens. And Fern's like, well, the ship's dead if we don't do something, so I'm going to hit this button and see what happens. And what it does is it shunts off, basically, remember in Dark Knight where the Bat bike comes out of the Batmobile?
Yes.
Remember it shoots out? All right, it's like that in reverse, where there's a slim ship that's the back. And so the whole front is almost like a sheath of a knife, and it comes off.
It's when the Enterprise splits.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, except that the ship that's inside is much cooler looking. It looks like a Mandalorian version of Padme's ship from Phantom Menace. Like, it's nice looking.
Got it.
It's a neater looking ship. So they get out and they escape. Right? Okay, so they take off. Meanwhile, Jude is about to be killed, but he invokes this pirate thing where you're allowed to make an appeal to the crew of the ship, and they will decide whether to kill you instantly or not. And he manages to tell him, he's like, look, I know where this mint is. He's like, the reason that we all hate being pirates secretly is that there's never enough credits. No matter what you do, you have to divvy it up. You always have some share of something. You never get the whole thing. And that just makes you have to go after something else that you then have to split up. He's like, what if there was a place where we could just have all the credits we ever need so that all of you could do all the things you want to do? And they spare him and say, all right, you take us there. If it's there, then we'll let you live. If it's not, we're going to shoot you out an airlock. So it's like, all right, well, here's where it is. Because Smee has the location.
You know what? You don't hear enough blowing people out of airlocks in Star Wars.
No, you really don't. But boy, do they want to do it. So, so they basically, now everybody's going to At Adin. So now we cut back to At Adin. I'm just going through the whole thing. So then we cut back to At Adin. The parents figure out how to launch the transmitter, at which point all the security robots start converging on them and they start stunning them. But they manage to fire off the message, and it's really just a message telling the kids that, we're trying to find you. We love you. You're not alone. It's almost just like a letter from these parents to the kids so that they don't think they've been abandoned, as opposed to really a message on like what they're doing. It's more of just a, hey, we're not forgetting about you, and we want you to get you home, and we will get you home type of thing. So the pirate ship arrives at the same time as the the slim ship arrives with the kids. And Jude Law's like looking at the thing, and he says, it's down there. And on the surface, it looks like it's like a planet of just acid storms. And so Wolfman is like, all right, you're a liar. We're going to kill you. He's like, no, I'll take a ship and I'll show you. And the Wolfman's like, yeah, I don't trust you for shit. I'll send one of my guys. And so they send a guy out in a ship, and he goes through, and he's like, okay, I'm going through. And then he suddenly blows up. And so they're about to execute Jude Law when the kids show up on the ship, and he's like, no, it's that ship. It's that ship. That ship will make it through. And so Wolfman's like, all right, fine. Let's see if the ship makes it through. And it does. The ship makes it through. So the ship goes through, and so the kids are now held hostage, right? But Jude Law gets through, and he gets to the planet, and when he arrives, because he's in that ship, all of the security droids say, "Oh, you're the Republic's emissary. You've come to get the money," or whatever. And so now they're all deferring to him because they think he's like an official of the Republic. So he lands and they're treating him like royalty, right? So he's like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm the Republic emissary. You're right. By the way, I have a ship in orbit. I need you to let them land. And so, of course, they let the ship come through. And when the ship comes through, they're getting ready to blow everything up. And Jude Law's like, "Oh, take me to the super." And so the kids and everybody come off the ship. He's like, "Oh yeah, I found these kids for you. We'll get them to their parents, but do me a favor, because these kids cause so much trouble. I need you to watch them. So go into their homes and keep an eye on them, except for Fern and her mother, because her mother's like the higher up in the government or whatever. He's like, I want those two to stay with me so that they can go and talk to the supervisor with me." And at this point, Jude Law's just full on evil now. He's threatened to kill the kids. He told the kids, "If you do anything, I'll kill all your parents." Like, he is just gone off the deep end. And I'm sitting here going, okay, is this going to last, or is he going to do a turnaround? Because at this point we've seen, like, we saw
or are you
hut.
going to get the dreaded cliffhanger?
Right. But also, I've skipped over, like, we saw a Jabba type of creature. We've seen a bunch of creatures that were in Jabba's palace. We're getting all this old Star Wars stuff, and I'm going, there's a lightsaber. He's got the lightsaber. He's using the Force more. Where are we going with this? Are we just going to end up going back to the old well? Because it sure seems like that's where it's going. So they get there. They go to meet the supervisor, and the supervisor is a giant droid. He's just a giant machine in the center of the planet. And he meets it, and he's like, "Oh, okay, so there's no person. It's just you." And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right, well, yeah, my ship's here, and I'm the emissary." And the robot says something about, I don't remember what he says about a lightsaber. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, well, I'm a Jedi, too." And he's like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm a Jedi." Because he thinks that means that the robot's going to, just wave it away. And he's like, "Interesting, because the last transmit we got from the Republic is that all Jedis are traitors. So are you lying about being a Jedi?" Yeah, right? This shit comes out of nowhere. I'm like, fucking, it's Order 66.
Sorry, that's actually well done.
It was, I was like, holy shit, that's how you do old legacy stuff correctly, is you bring it like that. Because obviously Jude Law didn't know that. So he's like, fuck. And he takes the lightsaber out and he stabs the supervisor and destroys the entire thing, which puts the entire planet into global shutdown. All the power goes out. So he basically fries the planet, at which point he tells the pirates, he's like, "Fuck it, kill everybody, take over." And so they come out of the ship and they're just they don't actually kill everybody, but they start like just take over. He's like, "You're now all my workers. You all work for me. You're going to make money and I'm going to run this fucking galaxy." And I'm just sitting here going, okay. They take over the planet. I mean, they take over the city, but the city is this planet because that's where the mint is. And there's a point where he goes into the mint and it's just tons of gold. And he's like letting it flood on him. And he's laughing. He's like, ah, he's just going crazy. And so the kids, because now the security droids shut off, so the kids kind of get together and like, okay, we have to stop him. How are we going to stop him? And one of them, I think Wim says, "Remember when we met the owl lady? She said that the X-Wings were the good guys. If we can get a message to her and tell her that the pirates are here, they'll send the X-Wings." And so they're like, okay, that's what we'll do. So they need to steal the ship back. So they have to, and this is the cool part, is they all split up because they realize everybody has to do something different. So Wim says, "I'm going to get Fern. She's stuck up there. I have to get her." And the dad's like, "All right, well, then I'll help you." And the dad says, "And I'm the only person who can get the power back on because I'm an engineer." So they try to figure out, and the power relays are up in that tower, which is where the supervisor was and where Jude Law is having his like orgasmic fucking power fantasy thing where he's just like he's like, "I own everything. I run the fucking this." He's like going, it's great. I mean, he's not doing it like that. He's doing it subtle.
I mean, listen, it is it is Treasure Island. I mean, if you've read Treasure Island, I mean,
yes,
like
it is.
He does
Absolutely.
go bad, but and let me get at the last minute, he does something good for the kids, right?
Okay, so
Go on.
So here's what happens, right? Well, all right. So, because I was looking for the tell, because I'm like, okay, there's going to be something that's, because I was actually curious if he would kill one of the parents. That's what I thought it was that's where it seemed to be going. So everybody splits up. So Cyber Girl gets the ship, and she's going to fly out. Elephant Guy says, yeah, but they're going to try to kill you when you leave, so I need to hold them off with a turbo laser. So he goes to this giant gun to be able to shoot at the pirate ship. And then Wim goes to rescue Fern and her mother. So they go up there, and they're basically trying to distract Jude Law so he doesn't see that the dad kind of sneaks behind and turns the power back on. And that allows the docking clamps to come off the ship so that Cybergirl can take off. So she takes off, and somebody says to Wim, oh, and before that, I forgot, Jude Law decapitates Smee with a lightsaber.
I was about to ask you what became with Smee.
Right. There was a thing where when he first boards the ship again, he's wearing the helmet from the first thing. So, of course, it's Jude Law. We knew that. So he's got all of his ship back on. And he comes in and he says, yeah, I'm claiming this ship because because he threatens to kill, I think, Wim, and says, yield your ownership of the ship to me. And she's like, okay. And then Smee says something about, yeah, but you can't have claim to two ships. You either have the pirate ship or you have this ship. And he's like, fine, I want this ship then. But right before he does it, Wim starts to say, oh, I claim, and then he grabs him and like covers his mouth. And so he says, yeah, I want this ship. And so then Fern says, no, I'm revoking his claim because Wim was about to claim it. And Jude Law's like, that's not how it works. And Smee's like, yeah, but it's close enough, and fucking punches him and knocks him out because I guess he just likes the kids. I don't know. I don't care. He sort of bends the rules. And then he's getting ready to help them, at which point Jude Law ignites the lightsaber and cuts his fucking head off. And that's when he then is like, all right, I'm going to kill you if you don't just shut up. We're going down to the planet. That was before. So they get down to the planet. All the other stuff happens. So Cybergirl takes off in the ship. The dad manages to activate the power. And there's a like an emergency deactivation switch that will shut off because they're afraid that the girl's not going to make it out of the barrier. That the X-Wings won't make it in because there's all these planetary defenses that the Republic had set up. So she can get out because she's in the magic ship, but the X-Wings won't be able to get in. So the dad's like, yeah, but if you shut off the defense system, everything that's bad about the rest of the universe can come in, and they're all going to want to be here. And Fern, or I think the mother says that to Fern, and Fern's like, yeah, but you know what? There's good people out there too. Yes, there's a lot of bad, but we've met good people everywhere we've been, which I thought about it, and they're right. Every place they land,
someone helped
even though there's somebody helps them.
Even on the pirate planet, there was the prostitute that helped them.
Right, and then on the pleasure planet, there's this giant monster who helps them just because they tell him funny stories. He's this giant thing, and it's hysterical because he looks like a giant like death monster, and he's like, yeah, tell me some stories, I'll help you, and so he helps him out. So then that convinces the mother, and you see that the dad's reaching for it, and Jude Law is like force bending his hand back and starting to break his fingers because he's trying to stop him from grabbing this thing, but he's also trying to like stop the kid. Like he's doing so many things that it's overwhelming his ability to concentrate. And so the mother comes up, grabs the lever, and shuts it off, which drops the planetary shield right as the X-Wings show up. And so Jude Law starts walking towards him. He's like, okay. And I was like, is he now going to kill somebody? And then I saw a shot where you see Smee's, there's a little, how Smee had that little mouse thing in his eye?
Yes, yeah.
When he got killed, one of the kids grabbed it and was kind of, I think Wim had it. And so it's on the ground and he's walking towards it. I'm like, okay, if he steps on it, then he's going full bore Vader. If he doesn't step on it, then he's probably going to have a turnaround. And he doesn't step on it. So I'm like, that's the tell. They didn't have him kill a creature. So they basically managed to, they run away from him. But before they do that, he kind of stops Wim and he's like, let me tell you something. He's like, when I was a kid, I had nothing. I lived on the street and all I did was try to have food. And a Jedi found me and started to train me. And then the Order 66 people came, but he didn't know what it was. He just said then somebody came for the Jedi and killed her and left me on my own. And that's when I realized that you can't be nice in this world. You just have to take anything that there is. Anytime somebody shows you kindness, don't count on it. That's not the universe. The universe is just darkness and misery with occasional little pinpricks of light. And you do anything you can to get those pinpricks of light. I'm like, okay. So now the kid's going to appeal to him. But what they do is, no, the kids run out and leave him there and seal him in. And he looks out the window and sees the X-Wings. They come in, they just destroy everything on the pirate ship and blow it up. And he's just standing there, and he's just kind of like sagging because he sees that everything is gone and they're coming for him. And then he's stuck there. That's the last you see of him. And then the kids are out there, and they're kind of like, celebrating that they won. And everybody's happy, and they're back with their parents. And then the show ends.
What happens
and that's
to
it.
the planet? The robot leader is dead. Are they now part of the New Republic?
I would assume that's what's going to happen, is that the New Republic, I think the idea is nobody knew about this planet. They all assumed it was fantasy. And the planet was determined to keep everybody in and make sure nobody knew about it. And because everybody from the outside thought it was myth, nobody really took a second look at it.
So I wonder
and
what
of course,
now.
Well, look, this is the thing.
What's the time? What's the time frame? Did they say what the time frame for the Skeleton Crew is?
Well, it's got to be same time as Mandalorian, because it's the same kind of X-Wings with the New Republic stuff. It's all the same.
Oh, yeah. So that means that Ahsoka's around and the Mandalorian's around.
Right.
Oh, interesting. And there's not that many Jedi out there, are there?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, you don't really know how far Jude Law got, because he uses the lightsaber like a Jedi. There's a point where all the robots are shooting at him, and he's deflecting everything. So he clearly was further along.
He's a rogue, but he's a rogue Jedi because he's not Sith.
No, he's not a Sith. He's like a gray spy. There was black spy, white spy, and gray spy. He's the gray spy. He knows how to use the Force, and he can use a lightsaber, but he also has no morality. I mean, obviously I forgot to mention this. So there's a point where the Wolfman, the kids grab him, and they're trying to barter the Wolfman to be able to escape. And Jude Law walks up to the Wolfman and blows his head off with a blaster. And he's like, nope, no leverage for you. And he just shoots him in the face. But of course, because there's no blood, you can do that on a show like this because there's no blood. But he fucking mob executes him in front of the kids. It's fucking brutal.
Wow, so the Wolfman is fucked as well. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is they're like, all right, if you let us out, then we'll let him go. And Jude Law's like, oh, I'll take care of this. He just walks up, puts the gun to his temple, and fucking shoots him. Done, gone. So
he goes full fucking
and that was the thing is I was like, are they going to turn around? No. At the end, he's a scumbag.
Now he does. Wow.
No, he's got the wiggle room. They could turn him around. Because he never kills anybody good, because he didn't kill that creature, because he didn't kill the kids. I really thought he was going to kill.
He doesn't kill a parent. He doesn't kill anybody good. He only kills bad guys. Right.
But I mean, when he puts the knife to the girl's throat, I was like, holy shit. Yeah, you can't pretend that he's like faking it now, because like he's getting ready to cut her head off and then Wim almost kills himself with the lightsaber, which I thought was both funny and impressive because it makes the lightsaber very, very dangerous. Because,
but you know what? But listen, that actually, I like that because...
No, I think it's great.
The guy who did the second Star Wars sequel, the Last Jedi, he was talking about the idea with Luke Skywalker, this idea of, what happens when something you do, like when basically you try to train a child and it goes horribly wrong. And he said, it's almost like a child accidentally killing themselves with a lightsaber. How do you move on from that? And you're kind of like, it is a dangerous fucking thing.
It is.
Yeah. So overall then, how did you enjoy it?
So I would say, before I go any further.
Yeah.
200 hours later.
I think this is the best thing I've seen since probably the only thing better of the new Star Wars stuff than this is the animated stuff. I think this is better than the first season of The Mandalorian.
Oh,
I honestly
do. The weird, different artists, different takes on it. That is really good.
It's excellent. Outside of that, this is the best thing I've seen.
But in the realm of live action, you think this is the best?
The best one of anything since probably the original trilogy.
Wow.
In terms of it doesn't feel constrained by the original stuff. It does feel, the Goonies reference, the Treasure Island, that's all there. I love the music. I fucking love the music in this show. It's great. Like all of the pirate stuff is very obvious and present and well done. I think
and fits. I mean, and it works. I mean, because the thing is, like, you've in the Mandalorian, there's so many obvious cowboy references. That
yes,
it's like,
and in this, it's all
cowboys,
it's all pirate stuff.
Pirates, yeah.
But, and here's the important difference: you can see Jude Law's face. They took the best actor, and he's exceptionally good. Like you can see him dropping the act and becoming more openly sinister as he gets more leverage.
No, and he's a good actor too. So it's like he can. Really
he's a
play
great actor. Yeah. So that's what I mean is that makes it better than Mandalorian. I can see his face. Yeah. So yes, it's better. I mean, I'm not going to say it's flawless. There's, because
what's funny is that I think the best episode of Mandalorian for me is the episode where you see the most of his face. It's the episode with Bill Burr where he has to take the helmet off in the cantina. Yeah. And I think that's probably one of my favorite Mandalorian episodes.
Right.
But that's mostly because Bill Burr is so great in that episode. But yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I will try to see if I can. I mean, if the kids won't see it, then I'll just see it on my own because I was very curious. But I was mystified that they seemed to lose an interest in it, and I think it's because I think my daughter likes Jude Law. We watched Sherlock Holmes a while back, and she really likes. Sometimes they get kind of a character hold. So like if they see an actor as a certain character, they don't want to think of that character as the actor as being something other than that character. So it's the whole idea like Jude Law is Watson. He's a good guy. They don't like the idea of him being something else. And like I kind of get that from a kid. Like, I'm trying to remember the first time I saw Kurt Russell as a bad guy and the fact that I didn't like it. Like, what was the first? I'm trying to think. Was the first movie I saw where Kurt Russell was the bad guy?
Ooh.
Oh yeah, actually, hold on. Now I'm curious because I remember. Let's see.
I can't even think of one where he's the bad guy.
Well,
what movies has he been a bad guy in?
Death Proof. That's one of them.
Well, okay.
Yeah, well, he's the fucking bad guy.
That's true, but...
Oh, Dark Blue. That's another one where he's kind of questionable.
Oh, I forgot about that movie.
Yeah,
you're right. Death Proof is probably the only one.
Yeah,
it's the only one I can think of that I can actually remember.
Dark Blue. No, there was something else he was in where he was...
There was Breakdown. Breakdown, I think he was a bad guy, wasn't he? Was he the bad guy in Breakdown, or was he the victim in Breakdown?
No, he was the victim in Breakdown.
Oh, okay.
Because nobody believed him that his... you know what? I'm going to IMDb. Right. Hold on.
Well, no, Stargate, he's not a bad guy.
No, not at all.
He was in Forrest Gump? Oh, he was the voice of Elvis Presley? Okay, I didn't know that. Oh, I guess technically he was the bad guy in Backdraft, but I wouldn't really count that.
No. Was he?
He was a sexual assaulter in Overboard. That's certainly true.
Yeah, I mean, that movie is
true. Come on. Backdraft, remember, he was the one setting fires. He was the older brother who would set the fires.
Scott Glenn.
Was it? God, I don't even remember that. Oh, no, he got killed. That's right. He dies because of the movie.
Scott Glenn is the one who's starting the fires. Okay, hold on one second.
To be honest, I don't like Backdraft, so I don't remember.
Let's see. I'm looking at his list here of memorable movies. Let's see. No. Escape from New York, The Thing, it's Big Trouble in Little China, Overboard, Tequila Sunrise.
I mean, there's movies on here I haven't seen, so...
No, I mean, I'm not finding a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I think then it must be... I wonder if it's the Dark Blue movie where he plays a bad guy that I was like, oh, that feels weird. And it's honestly, and that's probably why, I think Death Proof is good, but it's not a movie I like to watch often because I don't like him as you're so used to him, like in Hateful Eight, he's kind of a psychopath.
What the fuck?
What?
I never knew there was an extended ending to Big Trouble in Little China.
There is?
It's in his credits on IMDb, and I just looked it up. Yes, it's on YouTube. After he finds the three punks in the sports car from the beginning of the movie and then rams them and throws them into the ocean and kills them, it was determined to be too vengeful?
Yeah.
All right, wait a minute.
Is there a video
I'm
of
watching
it?
this. I'm watching it. Okay, there's where they stop. Okay, so so far this is all the same. Okay, he's saying goodbye to Wang. He's going to his truck. He does the thing. There's the monster. Wait, this isn't extended. What are they talking about? This is the normal ending. Yeah, this is this. Oh, wait. Oh yeah. Wait a minute. He's talking to Egg after that. What the? Well, that's. Wait, is this in Italian? Oh, no. He's talking to Egg outside.
Yeah.
Something with the errors of others are the errors of yourself. I can't even translate this. Hold on a minute. What the hell is this? I didn't know there was an extended ending to this thing. Okay, whatever. I don't care. I'm not gonna spend 2 hours looking up this. But apparently, oh yeah, no, here it is. Shit. Oh, Jack's Revenge and a last goodbye to Egg Shen. Really? Okay, I'm curious. Okay, so this is where
Did you find it?
Yeah, here it is. He's on a. Oh, it's before they get back to the thing. Yeah, they're all sitting in the car, and he murders those guys. Holy shit. He just.
Well,
he
to be
sees
fair,
them on
at that point,
I know, but I'm saying, Jesus Christ.
At that point, they'd
Okay.
killed a lot of people.
Okay, no, this isn't Italian. So he said after he rams them, he says they're all in the car. And he says, "I feel a lot better now." Okay. All right. So now it's okay. We shook the pillars of hell, and now he's walking. He's looking at his truck, and he's so he knew the monster was in there or something, because he sees something on his truck. Okay. Egg says, Jack, you should deal with the faults of others as gently as you deal with them as your own faults. Okay. And he kind of looks at him. Oh, there's Gracie behind him. This is fucking bizarre. All right, and then the rest is the same, where he's on the truck and he's saying the same thing and the monster's there. Wow. Okay. Well, I can see why
they
probably
took it out because he does fucking kill them. Yeah. I could see how that would be not considered to be like.
I knew nothing about this. I didn't know this existed. Okay.
You know what? I recently discovered a Spielberg movie that I swear to God is a blip in the Matrix.
What is it?
Did you ever see the movie Always?
Oh yeah, but not in forever. I haven't seen that since. Jeez.
Never even fucking heard of this movie. Richard
Dreyfuss.
It
was on
John
like
Goodman.
Cinemax all the time.
Yeah, I never even heard of this flick. I discovered it the other day, and I was like, "Oh my god!" It's like, how did I miss this? It's like, and it felt like a blip in the Matrix.
Isn't that the one where it's like the ghost pilot or something?
Yeah, Dreyfuss dies, and then he has to basically help him. And it was, I think it was
a comedy.
Audrey Hepburn's last movie.
I remember bits of it, but
it's like a comedy dramedy type of thing.
Yeah.
So, but Spielberg, you'd think that I would know his movies, and yet there's this one that I'd never even remotely heard of. Like somehow
that one's kind of like his 1942 of romantic comedy. Well, people are like, well, yeah, he made it, but let's just not think about it that much.
A lot of people apparently like it.
There's a lot of people who like 1942. I like
1942.
I'm ambivalent. I don't think I'd ever feel the need to watch it again.
Every time 1942 came on TV, I always watched it because I find it to be a silly movie.
I don't think I think I was like, oh, okay, and I would just go to like something else.
I know you're less of a World War II buff than I am too.
That's probably part of what it is. Is the humor doesn't work as well for me.
Yeah, whereas Belushi is a fucking fighter pilot.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing is everybody was. I knew the people in it, so I knew I was supposed to think it was funny. I didn't dislike it, but I mean,
honestly, when I was a kid and they fire that anti-tank gun and it goes right through the house, I laughed my ass off.
Okay, I do remember that being funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, Spielberg's got his strong movies and his weak movies. I was curious enough that I thought, man, I should see this. It's like because it's a Spielberg movie I haven't seen, and I never have seen that movie. So,
did you watch it or no?
No, I haven't. It's just on my list. Yeah. Sadly, it might be one of those things I watch on my phone, which I feel bad about. But you know what?
I don't think you should feel bad about it. I would say keep your expectations medium. Yeah. I think there's a reason most people don't talk about it much.
Who knows?
I'm not saying it's bad.
Blade Runner was a flop for a long time.
No, but okay. I don't think Always is Blade Runner.
No, I don't think that either, but I'm saying you don't know sometimes why a movie doesn't click.
No, but I think
and
that
whether
one
it will
is,
click later. You know,
I think that one is generally seen as a lesser
Weak?
Spielberg.
melodramatic.
So that's what I'm saying. Honestly, it doesn't demand a big screen. It's a romantic comedy about a ghost pilot, Richard Dreyfuss. Do you really need to see that on a 60-inch? I don't think so.
I needed an IMAX, my fuck.
I guess. Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Weird ending for Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes. Yeah. Very. I mean, I guess I could see why they cut it, because it does seem it's weird where it's placed. I thought it was after he left, and he just happened to see
it's
them. On the way back.
They get away, and they see it as they're escaping, and he's like, "Fuck these assholes!" Yeah,
yeah. It's right after he does the kind of brake check at the light.
Yeah.
And then he sees them out at the wharf or something, and he just rams
And I
them into
think
the
they
ocean.
probably looked at that and said, "No, you know what? Just cut it to this. This is a clear cut. They're out." Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
all the people. Yeah.
Some people probably forgot who they even were. They're such a minor part of the movie anyway.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing too. It's like
these guys.
Did they have the plastic sunglasses with the slats?
Oh yes, they did. I love those sunglasses. Yes, they did. I love them. Yeah,
those things are nuts. Yes, I'm sure those will make a comeback at some point.
I wouldn't mind wearing them.
I don't remember ever having a pair. Could you see out of them clearly?
Oh, I doubt it. They look like they look like the glasses that you're not supposed to call them Eskimos anymore. What's the word for them?
Inuit.
Oh, Inuit. Yeah, the Inuit wear to prevent ice blindness.
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
Well yeah, but those
they're like Mole Man glasses. Remember Mole Man had those, even though he was underground. So I really don't understand why he would want something that would limit his vision.
I know he wore them when he came to the surface.
Oh, he didn't wear them? Okay.
Because he couldn't see, because he was blind from being in the sun.
Because he's a mole? Yeah, I get the symbolism.
He's a mole man.
It's
there
subtle.
You go.
It's subtle. It's as subtle as Giger. Giger subtlety.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Giger. He was into sexual stuff, wasn't he, right?
I hear.
Sexy stuff.
I hear he had this thing with like machines and penises. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. Giger could put you off sex. I'll say that.
Or onto it.
You could be no. I have never looked at Giger and thought, yeah, this puts me in the mood. I think I could be in the mood and look at look at Giger and go, yeah. It's like
it takes all kinds to make a world.
No, man, if you're into that sort of like grotesque industrial foreplay, sure.
You know people are. So.
Well, on that note.
On that cheery note, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll be back next week. Until then, I don't know, look at Giger stuff, see what it does for you. No judgment either way. Have a great weekend. Bye! Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.